The various universes are filled with wonder and delight. The many adventures and heroes I have seen are but one way things could have gone. However, one different choice can give birth to a whole new history and give the multiverse new heroes. As for me, these are my stories. I observe all that transpires here, but I do not, cannot, will not interfere, for I am the watcher of this dragon world. Well, unless it's fun to interfere, that is. So accompany me through these journeys into the what-ifs that are out there.
A spacepod passes by the sun as it quickly approaches Earth. It houses two Saiyans, a father and a son, Bardock and Kakarot. They had just escaped a doomed planet. Bardock dreams about his last moments on planet Vegeta. Bardock told Guinea about his suspicions of Frieza, that their race was soon to be destroyed. Though she was skeptical, she trusted her husband. He was not going to accompany their son at first, but Guinea insisted. She said that someone needed to take care of him and that he should know someone from their planet. She would contact Bardock once their home world was safe. The Saiyan hoped that he was wrong and awaited her signal. In the meantime, he intended to simply stay hidden, but some slight turbulence caused the pod to crash harder than expected, taking the top of a small home along with it. Bardock hugged Kakarot to protect him, but they were both launched out of the ship as the door opened. Kakarot was okay, but Bardock was unconscious. He woke up a few days later in the same house the ship nearly destroyed. His head was wrapped in bandages, and his armor was set to the side. He was okay, but freaked out about Kakarot. He ran outside to find an old man playing with him. The father zoomed in to hold Kakarot tight, away from the old man. The old man laughed, explaining that there was nothing to worry about. His name was Son Gohan. He had been the one to nurse Bardock back to health, but Bardock wasn't interested. He retreated with his son to a nearby cave. As they heard Gohan simply laugh, going back into his house. A few days passed with Bardock working out in the cave, his eyes glued to the scouter laying on the ground. But nothing came of it. He would never hear the voice of Guinea ever again, but he refused to believe it. One day, while working out, he heard something come into the cave. It was a tiger, and it was carrying Kakarot by the armor out of the cave. But before Bardock blasted the tiger away, the old man saves Kakarot, kicking the tiger gracefully and catching the kid on one arm while holding a basket. The tiger scurried away, while Gohan gave the child to Bardock. Gohan thought that the kid might be hungry, so he brought them some food. Bardock was impressed by Gohan, not by the power, but rather the martial arts he showed. By all accounts, and as far as he knew, humans shouldn't be this strong nor proficient in martial arts. Gohan invited Bardock back to his home. The Saiyan still wasn't sure, but he was getting tired of the cave, so he accepted. Over the next few months, Bardock helped Gohan build a side room for the small home, for him and Kakarot. Bardock mostly stayed for the food, but he was really interested in the martial arts the man showed. Bardock was hundreds of times stronger, but Gohan had some impressive moves the Saiyan had never seen before. To pass the time, Gohan taught the little Kakarot some things, while Bardock watched. The child clearly enjoyed himself, and Bardock smiled, seeing a lot of his mother in him. Bardock told Gohan about the Saiyans, Frieza, and their work for him. This made Gohan really want to see Bardock stay on Earth through. He thought that Bardock could be better, more than just this planet hunter. Gohan thought that it was all crazy, but he had been through enough to know that it was true. Gohan tried to tell Bardock that he didn't think Guinea nor the rest of the Saiyans were alive, but Bardock wouldn't hear it. In fact, he took offense to it. He threatened to kill Gohan more than once, until Gohan finally suggested that maybe he should go back and check. Bardock stormed out, telling Gohan to take care of Kakarot. The whole trip had him worried, but when the pod finally made it to the side of planet Vegeta, his heart stopped. There was just a clump of asteroids. With a heavy heart, he retreated to Earth. Gohan awaited his arrival along with Kakarot, who sported a new gi rather than the armor. Bardock was quiet, but he faced Gohan while kneeling beside his son. Bardock told Gohan that he was right, but he needed to be proactive. He wasn't going to wait around. Bardock wanted to train, something the Saiyans rarely did. He was going to learn techniques and get stronger to avenge his planet and his wife. He wanted his son to become strong as well. Gohan didn't like his reasoning. He tried to talk him out of it. He tried to explain that martial artists don't use their power for this kind of thing, that he should keep his emotions in check. Gohan meditated for a while about this, and even in those meditations, he felt a dark aura surrounding Bardock. He was worried that if he helped him, it could mean something bad for the world. But he decided that he'd rather help Bardock and try to teach him about Ki, move him away from his vengeance, rather than leave him to dwell in his own anger. hunger, and he did just that. In a short time, Bardock learned everything Gohan knew about Ki, as well as some martial arts techniques. Bardock actually ended up really liking Gohan. In fact, one night, while Goku went out to get some food, Bardock heard screams from Gohan. He went out to check, but instantly turned back. There was a full moon. He couldn't risk stepping out and losing control. Instead, he instructed Gohan on what to do. Target Goku's tail. He already knew what was happening. His son had transformed into an Ozaru. Bardock hated to say it, but the most surefire way to stop Kakarot's Ozaru form was to cut his tail. Gohan achieved it with a blast. Bardock made sure to tell Kakarot about the Ozaru and how dangerous it could be. The tail would regrow soon anyways. But Bardock had changed little over the time with Gohan. In fact, he'd become even more violent, his emotions brewing within him. Gohan saw an opportunity to further Bardock. After many years of raising Kakarot and helping Bardock, a young woman appeared at their doorstep. Her name was Bulma. She needed help finding the Dragon Balls, as well as wanting the Dragon Ball that Grandpa Gohan had. He was reluctant, but then he thought of something. Perhaps this would be a great time to have Kakarot and Bardock separate. This would be a great test for Kakarot if he went with this girl. Meanwhile, Gohan and Bardock would venture on their own. Kakarot was already excited about the idea. He liked the thought of having to catch up with his father. Bardock, however, was unsure. He didn't want to leave his son alone, but Gohan promised him that he'd be okay. Bardock never trained too much with Kakarot. He didn't even really tell him about Frieza. He didn't want Kakarot to follow him on some crazy adventure. He justified it as thinking that his son was just too weak to amount to anything. But in reality, he saw too much of Gine in him. He didn't want to get him hurt. So any training he did have was from Gohan, but at least he could watch him. This would be the first time without him in a long time. But Bardock accepted. It was time to venture out. Above all, he wanted to find more techniques that he could use against Frieza. He didn't believe anything about these Dragon Balls. It was clearly all just mumbo jumbo. Either way, they were going to go their separate ways. So from here on, at least for the first 2 arcs of Dragon Ball, Goku's adventures are pretty much the same, except for 1 or 2 things. For example, Gohan and Bardock actually get to the Ox King first. Grandpa Gohan wanted to visit his old training partner. They help the Ox King and Chi-Chi turn off the fire from Mount Frypan. And when Goku shows up, the Ox King is already willing to give him the Dragon Ball. After all, this was Bardock's kid. Come on now. But all of this simply gave more drive to Kakarot, because through his adventure, sometimes he would just be shown off by his father, such as the time with the Ox King. Another point where Kakarot did something different was the Pilaf gang. He developed into a kind of a little different personality. He still loved life, training, battles, and he was pretty silly, but sometimes he could be a little more serious. Analytical, just like his father. So the Pilaf gang only managed to capture his friends, not Kakarot himself. He escaped and rescued his friends just in time for Oolong to make his wish. He stayed inside of the castle the whole time, knowing the full moon was out. He explained to his friends exactly why he couldn't leave. They didn't believe him, but they stuck with him. Gohan tried to show that there was other ways to evolve. This included actually helping out Nam's village and getting them some water. Bardock felt uncomfortable about this whole situation, but he did it, and he did find some kind of satisfaction through it. They also came in contact with soldiers. They didn't know who they were or what they were looking for, but they were building a strange tower in the Icelands. It was clear that Bardock needed some new clothing for their adventures, so Gohan took out his old training gi, the Turtle School staple. Bardock wore that along with a robe, but keeping the armor on.
Hey kids, don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video thus far. If you like this sort of content, want to see more, and support the channel, then consider becoming a Patreon. There, you can help support the channel through various tiers while getting some perks of your own. As a Patreon, you will be helping improve the videos, get them out faster, fund the awesome thumbnails, editing, and much more. Overall, this is the best way to ensure that I can keep providing you guys with awesome Dragon Ball content. Plus, you get some neat perks, like an extra discussion video every other week, early access to videos such as this one, and behind-the-scenes content. So be sure to go to patreon.com/SmugStick and consider supporting the channel. Thank you to all the current patrons for your support, and let's get back into the story.
And now back to our show.
Through their travels, Gohan did notice some changes in Bardock. He seemed to be more willing to help people, a little nicer, less aggressive, but by the time they were going back to Mount Pautsu, Bardock took a step back. and realized just what he was doing. It was as if he was just being distracted from his true goal. He wasn't going to allow this to happen. Part of him missed being the old Saiyan warrior he was. He couldn't risk leaving Earth or anything like that, but he was sure he could find another way to satisfy his needs. Grandpa Gohan tried to stop him, but they had a falling out. Grandpa Gohan arrived at Mount Pautsu alone, and one day Goku came back to get some of his clothing. He was going to be training with Master Roshi. He asked where his father wasn't, and Gohan was just a little silent. He didn't really know what to say, but he told Goku that Master Roshi is a great master, and that he'd accompany him. Goku would then enter the 21st World Tournament along with his friend Krillin, but all in hopes to attract his father's attention. Meanwhile, Bardock took some jobs here and there, mostly for food. He became some sort of mercenary. It was pretty easy for him to track down people with his scouter, fly over to them and either finish them off or turn them in. He didn't do it for the money, but just because it was something to do. He also met some strange people that oftentimes showed off their greatest techniques before being finished off by Bardock. This included someone named King Chappa. Eventually, he was hired by the Red Ribbon Army. He recognized their uniforms. He knew who they were. The same people that were building something in the tundra, but he took the jobs anyways. He became one of the most well-known assassins in the underworld, even catching the attention of Tao Pai Pai. He thought that there was no way that this Bardock could be any better than him. And eventually, they were both hired to find one person. His name was Unknown. All the Red Ribbon Army said to them was that he had a Dragon Ball, and that he was incredibly strong. That's where Bardock found himself at the lands of Korin. He was simply following Tao Pai Pai's trail, but was surprised to see that the person they were hunting was his son. This was the first time he had seen Kakarot in over a year, and his power had increased drastically. Kakarot was perplexed once he saw Bardock. He didn't know what to say. Clearly, Bardock wasn't going to kill him, but he wanted to see just what Kakarot could do. Kakarot couldn't help but ask why he left both him and Grandpa Gohan. Bardock didn't have an answer. He just watched. And to his disappointment, Kakarot was having quite a bit of trouble against Tao. He only intervened once Tao was sure he was about to kill Kakarot, throwing a kick against the assassin's face right before he shot out the Dodonpa. Tao couldn't believe the power of that kick. He tried to fire more Dodonpas, but none of them hit. He deflected one right back. Bardock was going to walk away, but Kakarot stopped him, asking if he would go back with him to find the Dragon Balls, and returned to Grandpa Gohan. He told him a little bit about his adventures, about the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai, and how his Ozaru transformation was defeated by someone named Jackie Chun. This piqued Bardock's interest. Whoever this was must be incredibly powerful and have some strange techniques. To defeat an Ozaru like that, even if it's his weak son, he just couldn't believe it. But as they were talking, the defeated Tao threw a grenade at both of them. With a flick of his tail, Bardock threw the grenade right back. That was the end of Tao Pai Pai, as far as they knew. Though that Dodonpa technique was clearly powerful, he would have to take note of that. He had also heard about the Crane School through his travels, and he knew that Tao was related to someone named Shen, and had heard about Ten Shin Han, one of the greatest martial artists. He already had a goal in mind. He had to go to the 22nd tournament and enter. He saw the determination in his son's eyes about climbing Korin Tower. He was curious himself. Who could be up there? What could be up there? And in one of the few moments of true bonding with his son, he climbed the tower along with him. He watched them struggle to get the sacred water from Master Korin. He did feel a little proud of him, just to turn around and grab the water instantly himself. He knew the trick. This was no special water or anything. He simply smirked at the cat. He told Kakarot that they'd meet again, flying off into the distance. After the small adventure, Bardock decided that he needed to do something else. So he actually decided to follow around his son, but just from a distance. Sometimes even trying to predict where he would go, being ahead of him. He even watched him defeat the Red Ribbon Army. He was slowly getting stronger, but he still wasn't to the level Bardock wanted, and he still didn't want him hurt. Time passed, and the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai arrived. Bardock entered in disguise. One of his first opponents was the legendary Jackie Chun that he had heard so much about. Bardock made sure to limit himself in order to see his best techniques. This included the Sleepy Boy technique, a drunken punch, and an enormous Kamehameha. This was clearly an incredibly powerful opponent. Jackie Chun, who was of course Master Roshi in disguise, already knew who this man was. It was a little hard to hide his hair after all. In the end, Bardock won, but his next match was against Ten Shin Han. Although he wasn't equal to him in power, his techniques definitely took him by surprise. His multi-form technique, growing extra arms, and especially that Kiko Ho. This is because that attack was so much stronger than Tien himself. However, he noticed that it took part of his life essence. But he knew that if he won that match, that he'd end up having to fight his own son in the final round. So, instead, he gave up. The tournament wasn't a right place for their match, and Kakarot wasn't ready just yet. He did, however, reveal just who he was. He shot a thumbs up to Kakarot, and this gave him the drive to defeat Ten Shinhan. After the tournament, Kakarot caught up with Bardock, asking him why he was leaving again. Bardock said that Kakarot wasn't ready, but that soon enough he would be. That's when Kakarot felt something deep in his heart. Krillin had been killed. Without regard for anything else, Kakarot rushed towards Tambourine. Bardock had never seen his son like this. He rode along with Bulma and Yamcha for a while. They thought he was really weird, just a smelly old man, but Bardock didn't care. It had been a long time since he could just relax, and he did step in whenever they were in trouble. In fact, he saved Yamcha by defeating Drum. He didn't see Kakarot again until his son's final battle against Piccolo, but Kakarot was seemingly going to lose. Even Ten Shinhan begged Bardock to step in and do something. The tail around his waist undid itself, and Bardock took a step forward. A sparkle of electricity surrounded him. He wasn't going to let his son die, but then he stopped. With his good arm, Goku put it out, yelling at Bardock to stop, that this was his battle to end. Bardock's energy dropped, and he looked at Kakarot in the eyes. Crossing his arms one more time, Piccolo was floating in front and above Bardock, and he could see everything. And so he watched as Kakarot pierced through Piccolo, ending him, ending the menace once and for all. He could almost hear the Ozaru roar. Omitted. Bardock's eyes were wide. He saw his son's simple smile, and in that smile, he saw his wife one last time. Every other time he saw Kakarot fight, it was against normal humans. It was something he just expected Kakarot to be able to deal with. But this was a Namekian. Kakarot was finally ready. Bardock could no longer try to shield him from things. Not only would he reveal to him things about Frieza, but it was time to train him as well. Bardock flew Kakarot over to Korin Tower. Korin gave him a sense beam. Korin had something to tell Kakarot. Someone wanted to meet him up above. Using the power pole, Bardock and Kakarot went up to Kami's lookout. There, they met Mr. Popo, and after some training between him and Kakarot, they met Kami. He wanted to teach Kakarot everything, but he was reluctant about having this Bardock around. But he saw something in him too, a dark aura. Although it had diminished greatly since the last time Grandpa Gohan looked into it, it made Kami fear it. It reminded him of his own dark side in Piccolo. He decided that just like Grandpa Gohan before him, it was better to train this person, teach him about life. But this was a different approach. Rather than see the world, this was mostly all spiritual. After all, this is when Goku in the original manga learns how to read ki and sense the presence of others. Bardock does this as well. Him and Kakarot learn a lot from Kami and from each other, even going into the time chamber for a bit. Kakarot couldn't make it in there long. Even Bardock had a lot of trouble staying there. But time passed, and it was time for the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai. It was there where Kakarot faced off against the spawn of the Demon King Piccolo. Goku's battle was intense, but his training along with Bardock made him a lot stronger. Not only had Bardock stopped Piccolo from eating the bottle containing Kami, but Kakarot was also able to defeat Piccolo a lot easier and earlier than normal. When Kami wanted to kill Piccolo, it was Bardock that stopped him, holding his hand up. After all, it was Kami himself that taught him to value life. And Bardock sensed something within Piccolo. It wasn't dark or vicious, at least not like others. He stared down at Piccolo. He could be a valuable ally. After Kakarot and Chi-Chi's wedding, Bardock had the idea to find all 7 Dragon Balls. He finally believed in the legend. He managed to gather them all, but once he summoned Shenron, his one wish, to become stronger than Frieza, was revealed to be too much. The Eternal Dragon couldn't do something like this. It was far and above his power. Bardock damned the world, and for a second, the thought of immortality crossed his mind. Surely he would be able to do that. But then he realized what he was doing. He was a warrior. He lived for the fight. Being immortal would make the challenges meaningless. The second wish he wanted was to bring back Gine. But to his heartache, Shenron couldn't do that either. Not only had her body been destroyed, but her soul was more than likely reborn into a new being. And Shenron told Bardock so. After all, when a soul dies, their memories are completely erased in preparation to be reborn. Bardock punched the ground. There was nothing left for him. He wanted one final thing, something to remember the Saiyan race. He asked for old Saiyan garbs for the new member of his family, his grandson, who was going to be born soon. And for a few years, Bardock settled down. It seemed like a lot of Guinea had rubbed off on him. He was enjoying life with a family. Something not many Saiyans could say they could do. But one day, while drinking tea with Grandpa Gohan, he felt an enormous energy. An energy he hadn't felt in many years. He couldn't believe it. His firstborn, Raditz, was alive. He got up, rushing towards the landing site, waiting to meet his son. It was as if taking a fresh breath of air when he saw his long hair step out of the Saiyan pod. But Raditz was on guard already, an orb of energy charging up on his palm, ready to fire it off. But he stopped himself and looked at his father in the eyes. He had read an incredible power level coming his way before he landed. He just assumed it was some strange being, or even Kakarot, but he just had to be safe. He didn't think he would find his father. Raditz approached slowly and carefully. Raditz was speechless. He had so much to say to his father, but nothing could come out. He always pretended not to care about the Saiyans or his family, but he now realized that a part of him really did care. Even to his own surprise, Bardock pulled him in for a hug. It was a quick one. Raditz was a little uncomfortable. Saiyans didn't really show emotion or affection like this, but he accepted it. After all, he hadn't seen his father in such a long time. Raditz asked how he was alive and if his mother was around. Bardock looked to the side, a little sad. No, Guinea was not alive, but Kakarot was. They escaped the destruction of planet Vegeta together. Bardock apologized for never going to look after Raditz, but not only was it dangerous to put himself at risk of detection by Frieza, but he assumed that Frieza would have killed all the other Saiyans that he knew of, including Vegeta, Nappa, and Raditz. Raditz calmed his worries. He came here looking for Kakarot, to have him become part of their Saiyan squad. Raditz asked why all the humans were still alive. Wasn't it Kakarot's job to destroy them all? Kakarot and Bardock both met incredible opponents and treasure allies along the way. They learned a lot on Earth. This is when Bardock points at where his scouters should be, telling Raditz that he can tell people's power and detect them without using a machine. Neither Kakarot nor Bardock destroyed Earth, because without their mother around, they could just lay low together. But his mission was still in mind. He had been training for many years, along with his son, in order to try and defeat Frieza, but he knew that he wasn't to that level just yet. Raditz simply nods, listening to his father. He hated all these humans around, even the ones he will eventually meet. But once he arrives at Kame House, what everyone else is meeting, Kakarot and him don't really get along right away. Raditz is pretty brisk and insults the other humans. At the very least, he's happy to see that they've kept their tails. Bardock smirked, telling Raditz that once upon a time, they were going to have their tails removed, just as a precautionary measure. But instead, with the help of someone named Kami, they were able to learn how to control the Ozaru form. Raditz was very impressed. This was an ability usually reserved for only the elite. But seeing Kakarot playing around with little Gohan, especially him being named after a human, it doesn't sit well with him at all. In fact, a brawl sparks out between the two brothers. But this Goku was much more prepared for something like this. He's been training with his father for quite a few years, so the two brothers are quite equal in power. It's the techniques that edges him off over Raditz. The fight ends when Goku punches Raditz off, making him roll across the water. Bardock steps in between them, saying that that was enough. If Raditz was to stay on Earth, at least for a while they train against Frieza, then they will have to get along and leave the humans out of this. Once they defeat Frieza, Raditz will not have to be here for long. Raditz resigns, but is not happy about it, but agrees to settle down. He takes off his scouter and sits to eat. Kakarot and Bardock explained a lot of adventures they had together, and after the night is over, Raditz is invited over to Goku's house. In the middle of the night, however, Raditz is out, looking at the night sky, thinking about everything he witnessed today. Truly a disgrace to the Saiyans, right? He put on his scouter, clicking it on, and asking if Nappa and Vegeta heard that. Nappa's loud chuckle is heard, and Vegeta agrees. They will find the Dragon Balls. In the meantime, Raditz will just have to learn from them, and if he finds a Dragon Ball, then to take it. Over the next year, Bardock, Raditz, and Kakarot all trained together, their goal set on defeating Frieza. Even Gohan got in on the action a little, and more than a few times, Piccolo challenged Kakarot. This made him stronger as well. Raditz was surprised to see a Namekian on Earth, but that would explain how the Dragon Balls could be here. Only someone like him could create them. Kakarot already had some Dragon Balls at home, 3 to be exact. He found them while looking for the 4-star Dragon Ball to give back to Grandpa Gohan. Grandpa Gohan took Bardock to the side, telling him that he didn't quite trust this Raditz fella. Bardock, of course, was a little insulted. He was his family, he was his son, but Grandpa Gohan told him to meditate, sense his ki, and when Bardock did so, he did sense a dark energy. However, he dismissed it, asking Grandpa Gohan if Bardock himself was any different when he took him under his wing. Grandpa Gohan didn't argue. He didn't know what to say. But one day, a city was completely obliterated. Raditz's scouter confirmed it, as a spike in power was felt. Altogether, the Z-Fighters, including Yamcha, Tenshinhan, Chaozu, Krillin, Kakarot, and Bardock, all had to meet the power. Raditz was a little behind, but he arrived with them as well. It was to their surprise that they found Vegeta and Nappa. Bardock recognized him instantly, even taking a knee in his presence, but Vegeta dismissed him. He didn't care that there was another weakling Saiyan around. He was here to find the 7 magic Dragon Balls. Bardock was confused. Why would they want the Dragon Balls? Vegeta said immortality. Kakarot scoffed at the idea. They were Saiyans. Why would they need something like that? Bardock and the rest were already training to battle Frieza. Something like that was unnecessary, but it was to his disdain that over at the corner of his eye, he watched Raditz walk towards the Saiyan invaders and throw Nappa a bag. As he opened it, he reached inside and found 3 Dragon Balls and the Dragon Radar. Bardock couldn't believe it. Not only did Bardock feel betrayed by Raditz, but Nappa and Vegeta had destroyed an entire city. Kakarot said that he'd never forgive them for this, but Vegeta responded with a smile, saying that after he collects all the Dragon Balls, he will test out his immortality by destroying every single human being. That was enough to enrage the rest of the Z-Fighters. A plan was devised as Nappa planted the seeds of the Cybermen. The human Z-Fighters rushed in to attack, battling the Cybermen, while Piccolo and Goku went after Nappa. Bardock stood there silently, looking at his son. How could Raditz betray them like this? But even Raditz himself felt a little insecure. After all, he did spend about a year with all of them. He didn't realize that Vegeta would want to kill them. Even so, he fought his father. But Raditz truly did fight like a low-class Saiyan, tough and aggressive, something Bardock appreciated, but it was clear that he was not in the right state of mind. Bardock took advantage of this, calling him a traitor. It wasn't long until he was knocked away, landing at the feet of Vegeta. Vegeta was angry at this, and didn't have a problem going to kill Raditz. He pointed his hand out, ready to fire a blast at him, but Bardock rushed in, punching Vegeta across the face. He was sent hurling onto Nappa, who was holding both Piccolo and Goku by the neck. This allowed them to get away, and rush in to attack together. The entire team is stronger than in the original story, thanks to their training with Bardock. Even so, everyone's quite hurt. Thankfully, Kakarot's able to distribute some senzu beans, dividing them in half. Vegeta tells everyone to stand aside, that he wants to challenge this low-class warrior himself. He steps forward, facing Bardock. The fight begins. Bardock is clearly still weaker than Vegeta, but he has quite a few tricks up his sleeve, including the Sleepy Boy technique, which he learned from Master Roshi during the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai. Vegeta snaps into a slumber for just long enough for Bardock to gain the upper hand and throw him across a mountain. Vegeta is enraged and attacks Bardock violently. Kakarot's going to step in, but Nappa jumps in the way. Kakarot's done messing around, swinging his leg under Nappa, tripping him over and elbowing him in the chest. Kakarot rushes in, together with his father. The angry Vegeta exploded his ki, and in a rush, Tien saved Chaozu by throwing him out of the area, but he was caught in it, passing away. But Vegeta is getting a little tired of this, so he looks at the sky, and with a smirk, he throws up an artificial moon, asking why don't they take this up a notch. Raditz shielded his eyes, but Vegeta, Nappa, Bardock, and Kakarot all transformed into Ozarus. The rest of the Z-Fighters needed to get away from there. This was getting way too dangerous. The giant monkeys were just clobbering at each other, but Vegeta was much more used to this form than any of the others, obtaining the upper hand once more. He commented on how impressive it was that they could indeed control their form, but that wouldn't be enough. Piccolo watched as his rivals struggled, but if this world was destroyed, then he wouldn't get a chance to rule it. Piccolo ripped the top half of his shirt and transformed himself into a giant Namekian, jumping onto Vegeta, holding him down. Nappa tried to shove him off, but Kakarot himself toppled him over to the ground. The other Z fighters realized what they were doing. Krillin took the chance to throw a Kienzan at Vegeta's tail, while Chaozu used Dodonpa on Nappa's. As the Kienzan reached Vegeta, he blasted at Piccolo from his mouth, defeating the Namekian. The giant form fell back to the ground. Now the Dragon Balls were gone. How would they bring back Tenshinhan and the city that was destroyed? The two detransformed, and Bardock grabbed Vegeta, looking at him right in the eyes, telling him that he was the prince of all Saiyans. The thrill he felt during this life or death battle, that's a thrill he would not get again if he wished for immortality. It's shameful to think that someone like him would want that. Bardock offered one last chance to the two Saiyans. They would all go together to defeat Frieza and never see each other again. Vegeta realized what Bardock was saying, and finally he agreed. As the artificial moon disappeared, they began to discuss plans to head towards Frieza's planet. The fighters took a few days to heal up and plan, while Bulma and her father created a ship based off of the Namekian ship that Mr. Popo showed them. That ship was too small to house everyone going, so they had to create a bigger one. The team that would head out was made out of Vegeta, Nappa, Raditz, Bardock, Kakarot, and little Gohan. He insisted on going. This was something both his father and grandfather had been fighting for so many years, and though Chi-Chi was against it, Bardock and Kakarot promised to take care of him, and that no harm would come to him. Before they left on a Capsule Corp-made spaceship, Grandpa Gohan approached Bardock, telling him that he's going to come along. They had been together in this for a very long time, and though he disagrees with what he's doing, as in taking revenge, he wants to be there with him along the way. Bardock appreciated it. Kakarot isn't in this really for revenge. He understands why his father is, and he does have a connection to Planet Vegeta through him. But above all, he wants to see just exactly who this Frieza guy is. Vegeta and Nappa went out on their own space bots, but Kakarot warned Vegeta that he was dead next time they saw each other. They were going to scout the planet before everyone else arrived. Meanwhile, on the capsule spaceship, everyone trained, even if it's just a little. Kakarot also sat next to Gohan, who was very upset that Piccolo had passed away. After all, he would come along sometimes and train, and though he was scared of him, he liked him. Kakarot smiled, saying that he liked him too, and he wasn't really all bad, at least not like his father. While Vegeta and Nappa headed to Planet Frieza, the other team would head to Planet Namek. Bardock had theorized that that's where they would find other set of Dragon Balls, in order to revive the city destroyed by the Saiyans, as well as Piccolo and Tenshinhan. They weren't ready for what they found there. When they landed, Bardock felt the presence instantly. It was Frieza. He felt that energy he had not felt in a very long time, and it honestly terrified him. Surely Nappa and Vegeta would arrive soon after, once they figured out that Frieza was not at their planet, but they couldn't just wait around for nothing. Little Gohan, Kakarot, and Raditz would head towards the conglomerate of power levels. That was Frieza's ship. They would have to destroy it. Bardock wanted to stop Frieza from calling down the Ginyu Force or any stronger beings that could interfere with their plans. Destroying his ship was the safest bet. They quickly headed that way. Meanwhile, Bardock and Grandpa Gohan went to a Namekian village, following Frieza's trail. Grandpa Gohan and Bardock watched as Frieza ransacked the village, taking the Dragon Balls for himself. Bardock had warned Grandpa Gohan about intervening, but Frieza was right there, along with Dodoria and Zarbon, their scouters. They had to get rid of their scouters. But just as he thought that, he watched as Murray did that himself, destroying all the scouters that they had before being killed. Bardock wasn't too worried about the Namekians, but he knew that this was the best chance they had to separate Frieza from his soldiers. He launched a riot javelin at Frieza's chair, which went flying off. Frieza jumped out of it, but when he turned around, Bardock and Gohan were already flying away with Dende. Frieza ordered Dodoria and Zarbon to go after them, taking the Dragon Ball and flying away. But from afar, he could see smoke coming from his ship. Someone was there. Indeed, Raditz, Kakarot, and Gohan had all destroyed the ship, as well as taken the Dragon Balls that were already there. Now they were hiding, not too far away from the ship. Thankfully, Frieza couldn't read Ki, so he was completely blind, and without a method of communication, he wasn't going to be able to contact the Ginyu Force for a long time. But as Grandpa Gohan got Dende safe, Bardock confronted Dodoria. The alien mocked the Saiyan, explaining that he had been the one to kill the rest of his squadron. Bardock's eyes widened. So that was it, huh? It was indeed Frieza's plan to destroy the planet all along. Dodoria laughed, and a fight commenced between the two. But after the healing he got on Earth after the battle against the other Saiyans, Bardock was on another level, defeating Dodoria. It's around this time when Vegeta and Nappa arrive. They had gone to Frieza's planet and realized that they weren't there. There was only one more explanation. They had found out about the Dragon Balls. While Zarbon searched for the people that were responsible for destroying Frieza's ship, he found Vegeta and Nappa. He was happy to see them. They had scouters. Frieza and himself needed those, and asked the Saiyans for it. But as Vegeta tossed one to Zarbon, it exploded in mid-air. Vegeta had blown it up. Zarbon was insulted, but Vegeta was cocky. Now he had learned some tricks, thanks to Bardock and the rest. The battle did become a little harder once Zarbon transformed, but he couldn't stand up against two Saiyans. It was clear to him the long-awaited Saiyan rebellion, feared so much by Frieza, finally began. Without the Ginyu Force, Frieza needed extra help, so he called every soldier from the planet over to him. His Dragon Balls were gone. He only had 2 from the village he ransacked. Vegeta and Nappa met up with Bardock and Gohan. Dende, who had been saved by Bardock, explained that one Dragon Ball was with the Grand Elder, and that they could meet a powerful warrior there. They headed that way. There, they met the Grand Elder, as well as Nail. Nail didn't like any of these Saiyans, especially that Vegeta guy, but when the Grand Elder called them forth, much to Nail's surprise, he had a gift for all of them, unlocking their hidden potential further beyond. Though the boost wasn't as significant as others, for the 3 Saiyans, Grandpa Gohan got quite a bit of a boost. Dende got one as well. Now they had 1 Dragon Ball. The team then headed towards a Namekian village. They explained the situation and they were given the Dragon Ball. Though Vegeta and Nappa weren't allowed to speak, they would just ruin the situation. It wasn't long before Goku, Raditz, and Kid Gohan all met up with the rest of the team. They now had 4 Dragon Balls in total, while Frieza had 3. Goku and the others had stolen the 2 Dragon Balls that were inside of Frieza's ship. It was now or never. They needed to confront him. The 2 Gohans blasted at the soldiers behind Frieza, escaping away and being followed. Quite a few stayed behind with Frieza as well, but they had gotten rid of enough for the 4 Saiyans to enter the ring. Frieza was angry, angrier than he'd ever been before. He wasn't going to take any chances with these Saiyans, and that Namekian, as Nail stepped forward as well, proclaiming that he will defend his planet. The brawl began. Soldiers scattered everywhere as Frieza sat back and watched the show. But to his amazement, Vegeta, Nappa, and Raditz had gotten a lot stronger, able to defeat many of his soldiers. If only the Ginyu Force was here, they'd surely be able to win. But Frieza wasn't going to play fair, shooting a death beam onto Raditz's arm, allowing for the soldiers to gang up on him. But Kakarot defended him. Raditz watched in awe as his little brother helped. He helped him up, and they too locked eyes with Frieza. As the rest of the soldiers fell, it was only the Emperor versus the remains of the Saiyan race. Without further ado, Frieza transformed into his second form. But in the meantime, Grandpa Gohan and Little Gohan defeated some of the soldiers that were after them, and then, without Frieza noticing, took the 2 Dragon Balls that were left, summoning Porunga. Sadly, he could only revive 1 person at a time. They, of course, revived Piccolo. This way, Kami would be revived as well, and the Dragon Balls on Earth restored. With Porunga summoned, Frieza noticed him, trying to fly over there. Pretty much all the fighters were extremely hurt, with only Kakarot and Bardock still being able to stand up against Frieza. To get them all away, he transformed into his 3rd form. They were blown back. Frieza rushed towards Porunga. It didn't seem like the Saiyans or Nail could get to them in time. In this desperate hour, Kid Gohan turned to Dende and asked to wish for the power of everyone that's fighting Frieza to be restored. Dende did so. Raditz opened his eyes and felt an incredible surge of energy. All of them did. The Saiyans got quite a boost from this. And right before Frieza could reach Dende, Bardock appeared in front of him, grabbing an incoming punch and throwing Frieza back, only for him to be kicked away by Vegeta. He was being ping-ponged around. Dende and the rest were safe for now, but Frieza exploded his ki. He launched a barrage of death beams around himself. The Saiyans were forced to dodge, but Kakarot slaps one away from hitting his son. But as he smirked, he turned to his left to look, and realized that one was coming for Grandpa Gohan. He was forced to watch. As it hit, Bardock looked back and watched him fall. Frieza laughed, asking if he had hit someone, and realizing that it was no one important. But everything was quiet. Only the hum of the Dragon Balls and the deep breathing of Porunga. There was a rumble around the whole planet. Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta went over to Gohan and Dende. They couldn't do anything but watch. Bardock and Kakarot's ki was increasing rapidly. Bardock considered him a brother at this point, while Kakarot considered him a sort of father figure. In this Frieza, he had taken him from them. To Bardock, he could only imagine what Guinea's final moments were like before Frieza destroyed the planet. Frieza took her from him too. Lightning struck the ground as both Kakarot and Bardock transformed into the legendary Super Saiyan. Frieza couldn't believe it, but even still he mocked them, telling them that some hair change doesn't mean they can beat his third form. Plus, he still has one more left. Before he finished his sentence, however, Bardock appeared in front of him, grabbing Frieza's wrist and pushing him down. Kakarot walked up behind Bardock. The Saiyans looked at him in the eyes and told him to transform. Frieza was going to respond, but Bardock simply twisted his wrist, telling him to transform again. Raditz, Vegeta, and Nappa all watched in awe. With Frieza's final transformation, the two Super Saiyans stood up against their oppressor. But before the battle began, Frieza jumped up in the air, telling them that he had one more thing for them. A death ball was thrown down, crushing both of them into the ground. It seemed like it was going to reach the planet's core and destroy the world. However, the death ball went flying back up. It had been kicked up by Kakarot, and it nearly hit Frieza. It exploded above the planet. Frieza was now terrified. The battle began. Frieza wasn't done with his plan, however, trying to destroy the planet one more time by throwing down a death ball. But to avoid the same thing happening again, he blasted at the two Saiyans with death beams, hitting them in the arms. The death ball hit the core, and now the planet would explode. Hanging out at Kami's lookout, Krillin, Yamcha, Chaozu, and Mr. Popo got to look for the Dragon Balls, and eventually wishing everyone that was killed by Frieza to be returned to life. Grandpa Gohan woke up and turned his head to look at Bardock and Kakarot. This power was incredible, but he hoped that they wouldn't be consumed by this vengeance and this power. The Saiyans stuck around for as long as they could to watch the battle. It was incredible. Kakarot and Bardock were making quick work of Frieza, but when the ground below them sank and the Dragon Balls fell, they finally made a wish to teleport everyone but the fighters to Earth. And so, even Porunga reappeared there. But not long after, the Grand Elder passed away, the Dragon Balls being deactivated. For now. But the battle between Frieza, Kakarot, and Bardock was coming to an end. He was cornered, with Bardock on one side and Kakarot on the other. Bardock said,
"It all comes down to this. My fate, Planet Vegeta's Kakarot's. And yes, yours too, Frieza. We settle it!
Frieza was dead. Bardock clenched his fist, seeing a mirage of Guinea in the horizon. He had done it. Everything he had worked for up until now had paid off. But he couldn't shake the anger, nor the pain, and the mirage of Guinea disappeared. Kakarot went up to his father, putting a hand on his shoulder, telling him that they needed to reach their ship. But Bardock wasn't responding, and his aura erupted, pushing Kakarot back. His eyes were blank. Unlike Kakarot, he wasn't as in tune with his emotions, and the rage he felt as a Super Saiyan were overtaking him. Kakarot tried to calm him down, but all it culminated in was another fight between the two Super Saiyans. Every punch shook the planet, no doubt making their stay there even shorter. All Bardock could say was Frieza's name over and over, as if his fight wasn't over, and he saw his own son as that monster. Kakarot didn't have a choice but to retaliate, punching Bardock across the face, and then again and again. Bardock was feeling disoriented, but finally he snapped out of it, falling onto his knees, not able to stand up. Kakarot didn't have any more time to argue. He simply dragged his father onto their ship. With the last of his strength, Bardock looked at Kakarot, asking if they had done it. Kakarot smiled and nodded. The last thing Bardock thought about was his grandson, Gohan. He had been very brave through their adventure. He had a gift for him when he got home. Home. That's what he called Earth now. He couldn't wait for the next time he was there. Planet Namek exploded. It has been a day since the destruction of planet Namek and the defeat of Frieza. Kakarot and Bardock ride in their spaceship on their way to Earth. However, they're tired. It is then when Kakarot overhears something. He turns quickly, looking for the owner of the voice. There's no one around. It's then when he realizes that the voice is inside of his head. It's a plead for help. an unfamiliar voice explaining that men in armor and a looking glass on their face have attacked their planet, that time is running out, and that their people are being slaughtered. Kakarot has the option to not listen to it, but he feels it being very close, and he quickly steers the ship into the direction of the voice. Bardock wakes up and asks what's going on, but as he does this, a blast hits the ship, causing it to crash down. Was this a trap? Kakarot and Bardock quickly get out of the ship as soon as it lands. Bardock cracks his knuckles, looking up. His eyes widen. The person who had hit their ship was Recoome. Recoome laughed in his idiotic voice as the rest of the Ginyu Force appeared behind him. Captain Ginyu was dragging an alien. He didn't expect to see any of the Saiyans around here, especially not these two, whom he did not recognize. However, he was glad to see them. After all, he hadn't heard from Frieza in a while and thought that maybe they knew what was going on and where Frieza was. It's then when Bardock and Kakarot smirked. News hadn't gotten around to the Ginyu Force about Frieza. This was a great chance to test their strengths, proclaiming themselves as the ones who defeated Frieza. Ginyu didn't find this very funny and told the Ginyu Force to attack. Though they did rock, paper, scissors to figure out who went first, Bardock did not have patience, punching Burter in the face and knocking him against Jaice. Everyone was surprised. No one was supposed to be as fast as Burter. The battle began, and to Bardock's surprise, the one that gave them the most trouble was the littlest one, Guldo. His time stop was something incredible. Bardock knew to take him out quickly, kicking him far away. Kakarot and Bardock took down Jaice and Burter at the same time. The father defeated Recoome with a single blast. But as the two turned around, they saw Captain Ginyu holding the alien by the throat, with a hand pointed straight at his head. He ordered them to stand down. As they did so, Captain Ginyu pushed aside the alien, spreading his arms open and yelling, "Change now." The beam traveled towards Kakarot, but he felt something grab him. The alien that Ginyu was holding grabbed his arm and teleported away. The beam instead hit Guldo, who was just traveling back, and thus, Ginyu and Guldo had switched bodies. Bardock took this opportunity of confusion to slam Guldo's face against Ginyu's, beating them both. Bardock then turned around and looked at the alien, with the confused Kakarot next to him. This was going to be interesting. The alien introduced himself as one of the many people of planet Yardrat and welcomed them here. His people were being slaughtered by the Ginyu Force, and it was their leader, Pibara, that sent out a cry for help. After healing them, he was of course willing to teach them some things. Bardock thought that although his mission to defeat Frieza was over, he really did enjoy learning things from the many strange beings he met along the way, and he didn't want to stop yet. And this was a brand new opportunity with many more challenges in the horizon. Their stay on Yardrat began. Bardock learned many things while on Yardrat. In fact, he decided to stay longer than Kakarot. After learning the instant transmission, Kakarot headed back to Earth on his ship, but Bardock decided to stay longer. He wanted to learn everything that the Yardrat had, and wanted to teach his grandson about them too. When Goku arrived, he was met with a young man. His name was Trunks, and he warned about a future set of androids that would take over the world. He gave Goku a heart medicine and told him that in the future, the various Saiyans disappear into the universe, going off on their own adventures, so not many people stay on Earth to protect it. Last he heard was that Vegeta and Nappa took over part of the Frieza force. The young man said as he pointed back with his thumb at the remains of the Frieza spaceship he just destroyed. King Cold had arrived by himself to take revenge for Frieza, but he was quickly defeated by Trunks. Goku promised Trunks that they defend Earth. He also told him just who his father was, Vegeta. Everyone was happy to be reunited with Kakarot, though they wondered where Bardock was, in particular little Gohan. Kakarot said not to worry, he had something in store for Gohan in the future. Kakarot was also glad to see Grandpa Gohan was alive and well. The Namekians had also been given a new planet. Nail had promised all of them that nothing like Frieza would ever happen again in his planet. And during their time on Earth, him and Piccolo trained quite a bit, and found a lot of similarities between each other. Either way, the preparations for the androids' attack began, as Kakarot warned everyone about what was coming, and as hard as he tried to stop them, Vegeta and Nappa went out into space. Their mission was to achieve Super Saiyan. Kakarot hoped that they would return, but in the meantime he had to focus on something else. Raditz, Piccolo, Gohan, and Kakarot would train. Nappa and Vegeta spend their time destroying the remains of the Frieza Force, and though they have an opportunity to take the rest of it over, they decide to instead get rid of it altogether. This did give them quite a bit of training, until eventually it was just the two of them. Raditz did not get along with the humans, though he started to appreciate them little by little. He had no choice either way. Him and Kakarot got into a few altercations, though Raditz knew that without Super Saiyan, he would never be able to defeat his little brother. And one of those days, he decided to head into space as well, looking for his father. Kakarot once again tried to stop him, but eventually the day of the android's attack arrived. Kakarot was a little nervous. After all, none of the other Saiyans were on Earth. He trusted them to return, and him not to have to intervene and go get them. But so far, what Trunks had predicted had come true. Krillin, Ten Shinhan, and Yamcha go down along with the rest to look for the androids. Krillin saves Yamcha, while the rest of the Z-Fighters confront the androids. Kakarot is the first one up to bat. The fight is intense, but Kakarot does get brought down, with his energy being absorbed. He's able to escape out of it, wiping sweat off his brow, thankful that Trunks had given him that heart medicine. This Kakarot is a little colder and more calculative than usual. He takes a lot after his father, of course, so he remembered to take the heart medicine. He's able to defeat Android 20. When Jiro escapes, Nappa and Vegeta arrive, just in time to confront the other androids. Once Jiro releases 18 and 17, Nappa rips the door open. Jiro turns back with a bright smile, explaining that these are his androids, number 17 and number 18. They are cyborgs, modified at a cellular level. They are his attempt to perfect the human form and advance it. You could say he was trying to make his own Saiyans, without any of the drawbacks of the tail or the stupidity. When he heard this, Nappa rushed in, slamming Jiro against the other wall. The doctor was knocked out, but 17 tapped Nappa in the shoulder. When he turned back, he was punched into Android 16's capsule, knocking it down. Vegeta and Nappa began to fight the androids, angry that Jiro could even think about making something like a Saiyan artificially. Neither Goku nor the rest of the Z-Fighters cared about this. They just wanted to protect Earth. Since there was an extra Saiyan on Earth, Jiro got quite a bit of information while researching for his androids, especially during the battle between the four Ozaru, saving all that information for a special project, as well as implementing it into 17 and 18. But neither Nappa nor Vegeta could really stand up against the androids, especially once the capsule that was knocked down began to shake, until the door burst open and Android 16 appeared. At the sight of Goku, he attacked, being completely unrelenting against the Saiyan. Trunks, who had returned from the future to check on the Z-Fighters, tried to help, but 16's massive frame did nothing but break his sword. Kakarot is being choked by 16, while Nappa and Vegeta are struggling against 18 and 17. In a burst of anger, little Gohan manages to push 16 out of the way, greatly damaging his body armor. However, 16 turned around with a rocket punch. The fist rapidly approaches the kid. Gohan closes his eyes expecting the hit, but it never comes. Instead, when he opens his eyes, he sees his grandfather, Bardock, had caught the fist. His armor was shattered thanks to the impact. Meanwhile, the sound of a key flash rang off. Raditz had been able to push 18 away from Vegeta. He quickly told him to get away. He realized that none of them were strong enough to defeat the androids right now. Nappa was nearly unconscious. Vegeta was going to just leave, but he begrudgingly helped Raditz push 17 off of Nappa, both of the Saiyans grabbing 17 by his arms and dragging him out. Kakarot was panting, trying to catch his breath. He thanked his father. Bardock was meditating at planet Yardrat when he sensed not only the key of Kakarot deplete, but Gohan's keys spike up. He knew that it was time to return to Earth, and grabbed onto Raditz, who had arrived just a few months before. Bardock told Kakarot and the others to leave, and that he'd distract them. Kakarot grabbed onto his son, while Raditz grabbed onto Nappa and Vegeta, teleporting away to Grandpa Gohan's home. Trunks, Bardock, Krillin, and Ten Shinhan stood in the way of the androids, but 16 focused on Bardock. He looked just like Kakarot, the one that was able to destroy the Red Ribbon Army, but it wasn't him. And though they fought for a little longer, 16 simply cracked his arm and turned back, telling 17 and 18 that they needed to find Kakarot, leaving away. But not before 18 kissed Krillin. That was very strange, but Bardock realized that these androids were after his son, not anyone else. Grandpa Gohan took care of the Saiyans, giving them some senzu beans. Chi-Chi was very worried, but was glad to see Gohan be okay, as well as Bardock having returned. But Kakarot was not happy. He was upset that android 16 was able to do so much damage to him. He wanted to fight him one more time and defeat him, but they would need lots of training. Even 18 and 17 proved to be too much for them. Bardock and Kakarot looked at each other. They knew what they needed to do. Head to the Room of Spirit and Time. Meanwhile, just like in the original, Piccolo fuses with Kami, knowing that there's something else out there, something stronger than the android. However, this Piccolo is somewhat weaker than the one in the original story. He has done more training, but he never fused with Nail. Either way, when he confronts Cell, he looks a little different than the one we know. He's a little bulkier, a little more savage. This is because there is so many Saiyan cells in him, from a whole extra Saiyan, plus a lot of the research that Dr. Gero did on the Ozaru. Although Cell still retreats, looking for 17 and 18 to absorb. Meanwhile, the teams are divided for the Room of Spirit and Time. Vegeta and Trunks head in first. Piccolo confronts 17. Even with this power boost, 17 is still slightly stronger. Ten Shinhan feels Piccolo's energy draining. The ki that Cell gives out is terrifying. Raditz and Nappa feel it. They're ashamed that they can feel themselves in his ki, along with Bardock and everyone else. They needed to do something. Gohan's enraged. He wants to help Piccolo, but Raditz puts his hand out. Kakarot looks up at his older brother, wondering what he's doing. He had changed quite a bit through their course of training, but he never expected this. As Raditz teleported away, Ten Shinhan followed soon after. Raditz did what he could to protect Piccolo, teleporting him over to the lookout. But before Kakarot or Gohan stopped him, he teleported back again. For Ten Shinhan, he never thought he'd do something like this. Not for a human. He watched as Ten Shinhan fell from the sky, drained by the Kikoho. Raditz yelled at 18 to run away, but as he reached for Ten Shinhan, he felt something sting him. Cell absorbed him, leaving nothing but his armor behind. Kakarot and Bardock clenched their fists, their aura sparking up slightly. Kakarot teleported in, telling Cell that this isn't over yet, and taking Ten Shinhan's near lifeless body. With determination, Kakarot and Gohan enter the hyperbolic time chamber, ready to train for a whole year. Trunks and Vegeta came out. Though their power was very impressive, Bardock knew there was something off. He wasn't sure if they would be able to take down Cell. On the way to fight Cell, Vegeta yelled at Nappa to take the old man, Bardock, over to their gravity chamber. In the spaceship they traveled the universe with. He better not waste any more time just sitting around sensing ki. Bardock was insulted, but realized that it was true. He wasn't doing much up here. Even if Nappa was weaker than Bardock, some training was better than no training. Plus, getting Nappa to get a little stronger would help. Nappa, who was watering the plants with Mr. Popo, nodded at Vegeta, telling him good luck. Vegeta ignored him, heading down to fight Cell, but neither Vegeta nor Trunks stood a chance against him, especially once he absorbed Android 18, thanks to Krillin and Vegeta's choices. But as they fought, both Trunks and Vegeta noticed something. Cell looked bigger and bulkier as time went on. His punches hit extremely hard, and the faint energy of the Ozaru could be felt. This was very worrying. Ultimately, they were defeated, and Cell announced the Cell Games, with just 10 days for the Z fighters to train or relax. Nappa was extremely aggressive while he trained with Bardock, and he actually learned a little from him, in particular about ki and spirituality. Bardock was glad that he could pass down something that Grandpa Gohan had taught him. In fact, he visited Grandpa Gohan before heading back to the lookout. The two men talked about everything: life, the Saiyans, and little Gohan. In fact, Gohan was the main focus. He was strong, braver than they'd ever imagined he could be, especially seeing how he was as a kid. Bardock reminisced upon the time he spent trailing his son through his misadventures. This time he'd gone to share in the adventures with his grandson. He realized that he was ready for the next step forward. Much like Grandpa Gohan did to him, he had something to give his grandson. But first, he had a request. Kakarot and Gohan came out of the Room of Spirit and Time, stronger than ever before, with an advanced form of Super Saiyan, Mastered Super Saiyan. This was something Bardock and Kakarot thought would be possible while on Yardrat training together, but they never quite achieved it. It was incredible for Bardock to see them do it, but he had a request. They could take a few days off to rest, but he wanted to go into the hyperbolic time chamber with Gohan, at least for a few months. Gohan agreed. He loved spending time with his grandfather. For a few days, the Z fighters got to rest. A lot of the time he spent was either with Kakarot, Grandpa Gohan, or, surprisingly, with Android 16. He was very intrigued by this android, and realized that, much like himself, he had lost something to Cell. Bardock lost Raditz. 16 lost 18 and 17, but Bardock made a pact with them. They would get them back, he promised. Before entering the chamber, Bulma made clothing for everyone, armor based on Vegeta's, but for Bardock she had something a little special. She upgraded it based on some notes he had. After all, his armor was completely shattered. He needed a new one, and he was quite happy with what he got. Bardock and Gohan entered the Room of Spirit and Time for a few months, but training wasn't the focus that Bardock had. Instead was talking to his grandson. Of course, there was a lot of training, and during that time, Bardock was able to tap into Mastered Super Saiyan, but he told Gohan a lot about Planet Vegeta and their life before the planet was destroyed. He also talked about their stay on Earth, Grandpa Gohan, and Kakarot. After all, Kakarot wasn't one to share too much about his childhood. Gohan was intrigued by all this, but didn't quite understand what this was about. Bardock said that he was just very proud of him, and that he knew he was ready. Could he know something that even Gohan himself did not know? Because he had already noticed something strong in Gohan. Something beyond Super Saiyan. As they stepped out of the chamber, Bardock stopped Gohan. It was only a couple of days before the Cell Games, and he had a gift for him. He opened a capsule, and out of it popped out a set of clothing. It was armor. It was reminiscent to the Saiyan armor that he wore, yet different, older. Bardock said that a long time ago, Saiyans would wear these, before being part of Frieza's army. He offered it to Gohan, saying that he would be honored if he'd wear these. And after all, after their training in the chamber, he was kind of his master, right? He had to wear a uniform. Gohan was happy to agree. 5 days before the Cell Games begin, the center of West City is destroyed. Cell had placed the ring of the Cell Games in the dead center of it. He was impatient. He took the first reporter and told him that the Cell Games would take place tomorrow. Bardock, Kakarot, Gohan, Vegeta, Nappa, everyone was ready. They would never forgive what Cell had done. Bulma helped evacuate the city. With just the reporter and Mr. Satan at the arena, everyone arrives. Remember, this Cell is more impatient and savage than the one we know. So after welcoming everyone to the Cell Games, he tells them that there's going to be some preliminary rounds, giving birth to the Cell Juniors. These are weaker than the ones that terrorize the Z Fighters. They're just really here to test their strengths. But even so, they're extremely powerful. The Cell Juniors rush at everyone. Cell sees this as a good way to get rid of the fodder. Krillin, Tenshinhan, Nappa, Yamcha, and this Mr. Satan guy, even Piccolo. None of them have a good time against the Cell Juniors, and Kakarot had more than he could handle, as he was defending Mr. Satan from his Cell Junior while fighting his own. In the end, Kakarot, Vegeta, Trunks, Bardock, and to everyone but Kakarot and Bardock's surprise, Gohan defeated their Cell Juniors. Android 16 also defeated his Cell Junior, and Piccolo was able to catch his by surprise. Cell called the remaining of the Cell Juniors back, telling them to stand down. The four of them just stood behind him quietly. But even after all this, Mr. Satan still thought that it was just a trick, standing up against Cell, before being quickly slapped away. Kakarot versus Cell comes first, and even Vegeta and Trunks notice that Cell looks to have gotten stronger, as if he himself had gotten some kind of boost after the battles. The fight was fast-paced and violent, with it being unclear about who's on top. At one point, Cell charges a Kamehameha below Kakarot. Kakarot begins to fly away in order to avoid the attack, but as he looks back, he hears a teleporting noise. Looking up and realizing that Cell had teleported in front of him, firing the Kamehameha. The only thing in his mind was Raditz. He knows Raditz's moves too. Kakarot crash lands outside of the arena. Cell is disappointed. He thought that he was going to be his match, but the Saiyan replies that it's not over yet. Looking over at Gohan, Bardock looks at him too. Everyone else is perplexed. No way this kid could be the one, right? But without much to argue, Gohan steps forward. This Gohan has had a little more training than the original, starting off since before Raditz arrived. Though he may not enjoy fighting nearly as much as his father or grandfather, he appreciates it, and more than anything, he likes the martial arts. After the year of training in the Room of Spirit and Time with both his father and grandfather, he feels more secure in himself. He touches his new armor, taking a deep breath. Let the battle begin. But Cell was angry. It seemed as if he was losing control of himself. His aura sparked up, golden, his eyes becoming blank. He was attacking Gohan without a care, and though the kid could defend himself, he wasn't ready for this power. Vegeta looked at 16, asking what was going on. Why was he getting stronger? 16 explained that a large portion of Jiro's research went into the Ozaru, and perhaps that research wasn't finished by the time it was implemented into Cell. They needed to do something about this, quickly. Android 16 looked at Gohan. He was going to jump onto Cell and explode. But as he approached the bio-android, Bardock stopped him. He looked at him directly in the eyes and said that he still owed Kakarot a rematch. Android 16 was confused, but Bardock took a step forward. While Cell was gripping his grandson, Bardock punched Cell in the face to get him away. Kakarot snatched the sensu bean bag from Krillin, rushing over to Gohan and giving him one. Gohan was feeling a lot better, but he was still stressed out and anxious. Bardock threw another punch and another punch, punch, but Cell was barely flinching. Bardock had one more thing he could do. Bardock got his ki ready, but Cell pointed his finger out, ready to fire a death beam. Bardock had to do it. This was one of his only chances. He rushed forward, his hand out. Then there was a boom. Things got quiet for just a second as Cell laughed. Bardock was now behind him, falling to one knee and clenching his chest with one hand. The death beam got him. Cell's laugh got louder. Meanwhile, Gohan got over to Bardock, kneeling down next to him. Kakarot stood back, just looking quietly. Bardock smiled at him, telling him that he doesn't have to be a fighter, not for the rest of his life, because he's not just a Saiyan. He's not just a human. He's Gohan, his grandson. And that's all that matters. Cell continued laughing, getting louder and louder, until he realized that his hand was back to his second form. He snapped his head around to look at Bardock and realized that he was holding Android 17 with his right hand. Cell was detransforming, thanks to Bardock's Force Spirit Fission, one of the many techniques the Yardrat taught him. And as for Gohan, his rage exploded. Every window around them broke, as a new state of Super Saiyan was unlocked. Cell needed to get to Android 17 and absorb him again, fast. Bardock couldn't sit up. He couldn't even look at the fight. He realized that he was still clenching onto 17, and he finally let it go, tired. All he could do is feel the incredible ki of his grandson as he fought second form Cell, but Gohan was just toying with him. The Cell Juniors tried to get over to Bardock and Android 17 in order to get him over to Cell to be absorbed again, but they were sniped out as Android 16 launched a rocket punch. All of the Z Fighters distracted the Cell Juniors, defeating them one by one, working together. Finally, Cell was backed up, hitting something with his foot. It was 17. He had been backed up right next to him. Piccolo yelled at Gohan to back away, to not let him absorb, but the bio-android laughed, sticking his tail out once more, but nothing happened. He detransformed again. Cell looked down, and that damn Saiyan, Bardock, was holding onto his leg, and next to him now was Android 18. Cell screamed out as Gohan pummeled him once more, but that was the last bit of energy Bardock had, passing away. Kakarot kneeled down next to him, saying thank you to his father, before taking him, 17 and 18 away, along with Krillin. But it was time to end this. Gohan punched Cell up in the sky, and in one hand, a blue orb of energy appeared. All Gohan could say was, "This changes everything," firing the blast at Cell, finishing off the android. Dende, who had remade the Dragon Balls, had the Dragon Balls ready for wishes. The first one was to revive everyone hurt by the androids. Bardock himself refused. Not because he thought that he was a magnet for bad things or anything like that. He was on his way to heaven. King Yemma stopped for a second while reviewing his file. He had done a lot of bad things in his life, but also a lot of good. So reluctantly, he stamped it as heaven. The rest of the Z Fighters accepted it. Though Gohan didn't quite understand, Kakarot put a hand on his son's shoulder, explaining that Bardock had lived a good life and accomplished everything he needed to do, defeating Frieza and raising a good family. Meanwhile, Raditz returned, thankful to everyone, and Gohan hugged him, something he wasn't quite comfortable with, but under these circumstances, he hugged back. Nappa stayed at the lookout, watering the plants along with Mr. Popo. He took a liking to that sort of thing, while everyone else dispersed through the world. Trunks returned to his own timeline, saving the universe once more, after destroying Jiro's lab that contained Cell in the present. Meanwhile, Kakarot's family gathered together, putting up a gravestone for Bardock. Everyone gathered together to pay respects, but as friends and family left, the person that stayed there last was Android 16, thinking about how Bardock kept his promise, that he would save Android 18 and 17. He couldn't be any more thankful, but as he stood there in the rain, he heard the voice of Kakarot. He quickly turned back. Kakarot, who was wearing a suit, ripped it off, telling him that it was time for a rematch. Android 16 smiled. And finally, in heaven, Bardock stepped out of the plane. Just another soul in heaven, but he looked quietly around, until finally, he saw a familiar hairstyle. He approached that soul carefully, until it finally turned around to meet his glance. It was Gine, and the two smiled at each other.
Oh, you two are sweet, but only you two should go. I got to spend a lot more time with them, and Baba said that your time is already cut short because she's taking 2 people.
Thanks, old Gohan. I promise, next time it'll be you going to see Kakarot.
It's time for the tournament. After a few months of arduous training, Vegeta, Goku, and Gohan, along with the rest of the Z Fighters, enter. Goku has been pretty adamant about the fights, so both Goten and Gohan have gotten a good bit of training in. Gohan has left behind his Saiyan armor and gifted it to Goten, the one that his grandpa had given him. It is a little big on him, but he loves it. Goku was able to turn into Super Saiyan 2, and they know that Goten's at the verge of it. Occasionally, Goku and Vegeta's families come together to train. The two dads have had momentous fights that rock the earth, making each other much stronger. Goten insists that his dad is stronger. Something only Goku knows, however, is that a special guest will be coming down to see them this day. In fact, two guests. As the team gathers together to enter the tournament, they hear the sound of Uranai Baba teleporting in. Goku taps on Goten, turning him around. Gine threw her arms around Goten and Gohan, hugging them tightly. After she let go, she approached her son. This was the first time ever meeting him. She said that Bardock has told her everything about him, and that she was very proud. She whispers in his ear, thanking him that it's because of him that Bardock ended up in heaven. Goku blushed and laughed, hugging his mom. He thanked her for everything and was very happy to finally meet her. Gine let go and punched her son softly on the chest, telling them to win the tournament. Chi-Chi joined in, telling Goku that there's no way he's going to lose. Gine and Chi-Chi celebrated in song, but they were interrupted by Vegeta. He smirked and said that they'd have to get through him first. Gine freaked out as she saw the prince, kneeling before him. But Vegeta and Trunks turned around, walking away. Bulma helped Gine up and told her to ignore them. Gohan also introduced his grandparents to Videl, who wondered why they looked so young. Gine was about to explain, but Gohan interrupted, saying that they have very good vegetables where he's from. The team headed towards the tournament, and at the signing station, they met up with Piccolo, Krillin, 18, 17, and 16. Android 16 was very happy to see Bardock, and thanked him for saving them. Looking over at 17 and 18, Bardock smiled. He had been the one to get them out of Cell. The androids and Krillin now lived on an island not too far away from Kame House. Krillin admitted that it could be rough at times. Because of their Saiyan DNA, they were quite aggressive, but 16 was always able to calm them down. Bardock asked where Raditz was, and Goku said that him and Nappa would be meeting them after the tournament. Though she didn't plan to at first, Bardock convinced Gine to join the tournament. After all, she was once part of his squadron. Gine was hesitant but agreed, just for this special occasion. Even 17 and 18 joined. They all entered, but they were approached by a mysterious being. Unbeknownst to him, this was the Kaioshin and his tenant. Eventually, the adult tournament began. Videl found herself in a fight against Spopovich, and although she impressed everyone with her powers, Spopovich showed off the strength he shouldn't have. Gohan began to become enraged, his power rising higher and higher. Goku and the Kaioshin tried to stop him, but neither Bardock nor Gine comprehended why. In one of the few moments of infighting within the family, Bardock pushed right through Kaioshin and Goku. Kaioshin's eyes widened. He was insulted but surprised at just how powerful Gohan and Bardock were. Bardock shoved his grandson, yelling at him. Goku tried to tell Bardock to calm down and to listen to the Kaioshin, but Bardock told him to shut up, yelling at Gohan that if he cares about this girl, then he will help her. If it was Gine in this situation, he would do just that. Gohan roared and his power exploded, pushing everyone back. He rushed in, punching Spopovich out of the ring. This prompted Yamu to instantly jump in while Gohan helped Videl up. He was stabbed with the Keely collecting machine. This Gohan is stronger than he otherwise would be because of all his training with Goku and the rest. And while in rage, his ki rises. Yamu manages to collect more Keely than he thought. Goku jumped in to attack Yamu, but this time Shin stopped him. They needed to see where they would go. He helped Spopovich up, and they started to go towards Babidi's ship. Kaioshin told Bardock to hope that this wasn't enough energy to revive Buu, but Bardock said that this wasn't his fault. That girl was going to die. Kaioshin explained that he didn't care who this man was, and that this was much bigger than him. He then enlisted the help of Kakarot and the rest, knowing that he can't stop Majin Buu alone. Kakarot agreed, saying that he'll just get a sense beam for Videl. He could explain on the way there. Gine was the lone warrior to stay behind. She knew she couldn't stand up against them, though she made Bardock and Kakarot promise that they returned safely. Gohan hugged his grandma tightly before departing. Gine promised Chi-Chi to get her prize money. Goku, Gohan, Bardock, 17, 18, 16 Piccolo, Krillin, Shin, and Kibito all headed towards Babidi's ship. Hiding behind a rock, they witnessed Babidi kill his minions. The Demon King disappeared and reappeared not in front of Kibito, but rather Android 16. To everyone's horror, they watched as pieces of their friend flew past them in an explosion. 17 and 18 quickly turned to attack Dabura, but he simply jumped backwards, spitting on Piccolo and Krillin. Shin and Gohan were shaken by this. So much death and destruction in a matter of seconds. Shin told them that there was no time to waste. They needed to stop Babidi.
I swear, I'm gonna make that Demon King pay no matter what!
Soon enough, the Z fighters entered the ship. Vegeta battles Pui Pui, while Kakarot kills Yakon. Vegeta was tired of this. He just wanted to go home. Unlike the original story, he has already had plenty of chances to battle Goku and settle down. Therefore, he's just bored, not eager to return to his old ways, just for a battle against Kakarot. Once Dabura appeared, the androids pushed their way to the front. The battle against Dabura, the Demon King, began without a single word. They are very powerful, but the demon could keep up with his various tricks. Through it all, he realized their anger, their aggressiveness. Dabura disappeared out of the room, and it returned to normal. Dabura explained to Babidi what he saw, that these two androids seemed like perfect candidates for allies. They were after all created with a lot of Saiyan cells, making them violent, without Android 16 to calm them down. Well. Meanwhile, Gine and Mr. Satan were set up to be the final combatants for the tournament. Gine was ready to defeat him, smiling brightly. Mr. Satan was confident that he could win, and thus it began. With Mr. Satan rolling in and punching her in the chest. It didn't work, and Gine was confused, but she thought that it was funny. Back at the ship, 17 and 18 began to scream out in pain. Kaioshin recognized what was happening and tried to stop it, with Gohan pleading at Android 18, but to no avail. There was a huge rise in power, and both 17 and 18's forehead were marked with an M. They had no choice but to battle. Babidi teleported everyone to the side of the hill, where the androids originally met, the Z Fighters. They could still see Dr. Gero's destroyed lab not too far away. Kaioshin explained to them that the more they fought, the stronger Majin Buu would be, and the faster he'd be revived. 17 clenched his fist.
I don't care! Don't you see, Bardock? This isn't just an opportunity to seek revenge against this Buu guy, but we can also finally fulfill our programming to defeat you and Kakarot.
The battle started, and the rest couldn't do anything but watch. These powered up 17 and 18 were incredible, and both Kakarot and Bardock were having trouble. Even when Bardock showed off his new Super Saiyan 2, Vegeta told Gohan to hurry and either head back to the tournament or help the Kaioshin with Majin Buu. When they were about to rush away, Dabura appeared in front of him. In response, Vegeta burst into a Super Saiyan 2 and slammed his fist against the Demon King. Now the three great Super Saiyans battled the three most powerful servants of Babidi. Every punch, every kick, every sweat drop, and every bloodshed giving life to Majin Buu. In the meantime, Mr. Satan bribed Gine into losing. She made him promise that the money would all go to Chi-Chi, and Satan agreed. He threw a punch right through her jaw, but the confused Gine didn't realize that was her cue. When the whole place went silent, she finally realized. Oh, and acted as if she was hit so hard that she went flying out of the tournament arena altogether. Gohan watched in disbelief at just how powerful all of them had become. He clenched his fist, realizing that he needed to get on their level. Kibito asked if it was wise for them to leave, and Gohan said that he wasn't sure. Vegeta's Super Saiyan 2 proved to be a good match against Dabura, who was being pushed back as Vegeta smashed his sword apart. The Demon King couldn't believe it, as androids 17 and 18 expanded their auras to push Bardock and Goku away. They were not going to allow Vegeta to be the one to kill Dabura, so 17 punched him out of the way. The twins blasted down, killing the Demon King. Vegeta and Kakarot swooped in to continue the fight, while Bardock smiled brightly. He was very proud. Finally, Krillin and Piccolo arrive, having been freed from Dabura's magic. Krillin's eyes widened, watching 18 blast at Kakarot. He couldn't allow this fight to happen. He yells out at his wife, telling her that Android 16 would have never wanted this, that they had changed, and didn't need to follow Jiro's programming anymore.
Did you really fight all of this to get rid of your programming? Just to be controlled by another weird old man? 18, 17, please.
This finally struck a chord with the androids. 18 kissed Krillin, as the Saiyans finally got a chance to rush out towards Majin Buu. Once everyone arrived, they watched in horror as he escaped out of the egg. Gohan hadn't listened to Vegeta. Instead, he just had Kibito go towards the tournament, while he went back and helped Kaioshin against Buu. He was stronger than anything anyone imagined, even Babidi himself. In fact, he was so powerful that he couldn't even control him anymore. 18 and 17 realized this, and actually killed Babidi, who was struggling to keep his magic on Buu, to calm him down a little bit. They couldn't believe they were tricked into being subordinates once again, but this was a losing battle for sure. Piccolo and Krillin rushed towards the tournament arena, where they explained everything. Without much of a choice, Bulma and the others agreed to look for the Dragon Balls, just in case. Krillin says there's no time, and that all they can do is get the Dragon Radar and wait to see what happens with Buu. Kibito helps everyone get to their respective locations by teleporting. Majin Buu's fight came to a standstill when Bardock jumped in the way of an attack coming towards Gohan. He spat out blood and looked up at his grandson. Bardock said that he'd probably want a new armor at this point. Gohan helped him up, saying that they needed to get out of there. They couldn't win, but Vegeta knew that they weren't going to be able to just escape out of there.
Leave that to us. That Bobbity tried to make us do his dirty work. This is something we're doing of our own free will.
You kids, I promised 16 I'd save you, and I will do it again.
Whatever, old man. Just make sure he gets back. Now go!
Bardock nodded at them. As Gohan helped Bardock fly towards the lookout, everyone followed. Behind them, they heard an explosion, but they couldn't look back. They arrived at the lookout. Majin Buu stepped over 2 pieces of chocolate in the shape of the androids, eating them. Now it was time to quench his hunger. At the lookout, Bardock was healed by Dende. They were all quiet. Until Nappa and the Briefs arrived. Nappa was happy to see that everyone was okay, and heard what was happening on the news. People have been killed all over the world. He was going to meet up with everyone post-tournament. But what about Raditz? That's when, from out of the time chamber, Raditz steps out. His armor shattered. He had been training by himself for a while, and lost track of time. Now he realized he was late, but glad to see his dad. He asked what was going on. In this story, Bardock was in heaven, and though he trained, he didn't have the same interactions Goku did. Therefore, there is no knowledge of fusion. Kaioshin has the idea of taking Gohan over to the Kaioshin realm to train while he can. Bardock realizes that Gine isn't around, and he starts to freak out. If she dies while she's dead, then she won't exist anymore. He focused on her key, and finally finds it. It's close to Buu. Without much of a choice, and despite everyone trying to stop him, he teleports away. She's standing outside of Buu's house, waiting for someone. Gine and Bardock are glad to see each other. She explains that her and Mr. Satan have been taking care of Buu for a little bit now, and she actually liked him a lot too. Bardock told her that she was insane for sticking around, but she insisted on staying. She couldn't fight Buu. The least she could do was buy them some time. Bardock kissed her, and he reluctantly let her go. He teleported back to the lookout. Gohan had gone over to the Kaioshin realm, but they couldn't simply stick around and do nothing, especially while Bardock and Gine's time was running out. It was decided that Vegeta and Goku would enter the Room of Spirit in time. They couldn't stay there for long, and the rest would guard the lookout. Bardock just hoped that one of their plans would work, but if neither Gohan nor Goku could defeat Buu, then... Bardock spent a lot of time with Krillin, comforting him about 18. He related to losing someone he loved. He also spent time with Chi-Chi, Raditz, Goten, and even Trunks. He would tell them stories about the Saiyans. He was surprised to see how little the kids feared, and even envied them. Eventually, Yamcha, Piccolo, Nappa, Raditz, and Bulma went out to look for the Dragon Balls. They saw so much death and destruction through their travels, and warned as many people as they could about it. Thankfully, they never really crossed paths with the monster. Finally, they arrived back with a full set of Dragon Balls. Bardock was glad to see them okay, but the celebrations were short-lived, as he felt a presence zoom towards them. It was Gine holding Mr. Satan and Majin Buu on their tail. Buu felt a lot stronger. Bardock told everyone to stay at the lookout, hide, while him, Raditz, and Nappa would go check it out. They catch up with Gine, who explains that Buu somehow split into 2, just to be reformed into a stronger, worse Buu. The 3 Saiyans have no choice but to defend the lookout. If this line of defense fails, they can't afford to put Dende at risk, so he's their main protection. Buu starts to fight instinctively against them, pushing them further back and back. It's clear that Buu must have felt the powerful presence of the people he fought in his original form. The first one to fall was Nappa, absorbed into Buu. They were pushed back onto the lookout, where the rampaging Buu used Nappa's giant storm to blow the top of the lookout off completely. Bardock tried to do what he could to protect Krillin, Yamcha, and Piccolo, who were on the top, but he was only able to save Krillin. Raditz yelled at his father to try and get Kakarot. Instantly, Krillin and Bardock ran towards the door. The rest of the heroes ran through what remained of the lookout, but one by one, they were turned into chocolate. The kids, Chi-Chi, Bulma, everyone. Raditz defended them to the best he could, and he got quite a few shots in. He had achieved Super Saiyan 2, and even thought there could be something beyond. Though he never got there, he did tell Kakarot about it. While defending Goten and Trunks, he was absorbed. Chi-Chi and Bulma watched in horror as her kids tried to avenge their uncle, just to be turned into chocolate. Bardock wasn't even sure if Goku and Vegeta would win at this point. Gine, Bardock, Mr. Satan, Dende, and Krillin were the only ones that remained. Krillin knocked on the door, yelling Kakarot's name. They didn't even know if they could be heard. Buu is relentless against Bardock, and he's about to throw his final punch. That's when he realizes that Bardock is defending Guinea. He hesitates, realizing who this man is. The second was enough for Bardock to be saved, as Goku blasts Buu away with a powerful attack. Goku and Vegeta finally came out of the chamber. Goku told Bardock to take everyone and the Dragon Balls to wherever Gohan is. He did just that, finding himself in the Kaioshin's world. Kibito is frustrated to see so many mortals there, but Bardock tells him to shut up. Gohan explains his training with the Z-Sword. Guinea is saddened to tell him that so many people died, including Goten, Chi-Chi, and Raditz. Gohan felt their ki disappear already. There was no time for grief. He had to continue his training. Guinea doubted that this sword would be enough, and Gohan invites her to pick it up. She can't. Even Bardock has a bunch of struggle doing it. Guinea thinks of something. They should probably test just how powerful it is, right? In this sort of situation, you can see where Goku gets his bright ideas and personality from. And of course, like the OG story, the old Kai is freed from his slumber when the Z-Sword breaks. So, shall the real training begin? Bardock thinks this is ridiculous and stupid, and he heads to Earth to help. Buu and the Saiyans battle at full steam ahead. The lookout is destroyed, but every punch shakes the Earth. A woof of dust blinds Bardock when he arrives, but once it settles, he is in disbelief. The way Kakarot and Vegeta work together is impeccable. To think that his son would be fighting alongside the Prince of all Saiyans in order to defend Earth, it's unbelievable. He didn't even want to help. It was a work of art. That's when Buu catches a glimpse of him. It was because of Bardock that he was at a disadvantage. Buu zooms towards Bardock, but Vegeta catches his leg, spins him out to the sky, where Kakarot appears above, using a spirit cannon down. Goku runs to his dad, asking him what the hell he's doing there. It's during this distracted argument that Vegeta notices something crawling towards Bardock. It's part of Buu. Vegeta pushes Bardock out of the way and blasts the piece, but the pink goo consumes his hand. The blast simply burns Vegeta. All he could do was tell Bardock to save Earth. Kakarot and Bardock screamed Vegeta's name, while Super Buu's power exploded. Now neither Goku nor Bardock could keep up. Bardock could never forgive himself for this. At one point, Buu's malicious smile stares at Kakarot in the face. Confused, the Saiyan throws a punch, which Buu catches and he spins Kakarot to the sky, just to blast him back down, the same way they had done to Buu. In the Kaioshin realm, Gohan is finally done with his training. He asks Kibito to take him to Earth, and says goodbye to his grandma. By the time he comes back, her time will have run out, so they will meet again someday. Guinea turned to Dende, asking him to summon Shenron. If what they say about the Dragon Balls is true, then they need to have them on standby.
Kibito, sir, do you think I could have an armor similar to the one my grandfather wears?
Gohan arrives on the scene, where he stands in front of both his ancestors. They could barely recognize him. This was incredible. Buu is quiet, deep in thought. This powerful man before him could actually be a challenge. Gohan and Buu's fight is one of the toughest ones of them all, but neither of them seemed close to giving up. Gohan let his power get the better of him when he allowed Buu to get a few shots in to bluff, but he didn't expect him to hurt as much as they did. Gohan was sent flying to the feet of the other Saiyans. Old Kai is worried. He thinks the sum of all the power within Buu could actually be too much. Thus, he tells Kaioshin about the Potara. He has to go down there and give it to them. Once there, he yells at Goku to catch the Potara and briefly explains what they are. Gohan and Bardock are fighting Buu at the same time. Goku doesn't know who to give the Potara to. He just yells, "Catch!" But this prompts Buu to slap Gohan away to a mountain while he uses his head tentacle and trips Bardock. He steps over his chest. Buu catches the Potara and stares at it, unsure of what it is. Goku gasps, while Buu digs his foot into Bardock while laughing. This is it. Bardock is going to die. Buu put his hand out, charging up a blast. If this hits Bardock, he'll be gone forever. Buu mocks Bardock as he dangles the earring over him. Meanwhile, Guinea watches in disbelief, and Uranai Baba appears. She apologizes to Kais for being in their planet, but Guinea's and Bardock's time has run out. Guinea yells at Baba that this can't be. Bardock has to help. The witch explains that if she doesn't get him out of there right now, he will disappear forever. That's when Guinea thinks of something. She ignores Baba, turns around to face Shenron, and asks for Bardock to be brought back to life. The blast hits Bardock straight on, and it hurts immensely. but he's still there. The halo on his head disappears. He couldn't believe it, and some of his power had returned, but he still couldn't get away from under Buu, who was surprised to see that he was still alive. A persistent one, wasn't he? Buu is simply going to crush the Potara, but as he's about to do it, he feels a blast hit his hand. It's enough to make him drop the Potara. It was Gohan. Bardock puts out his hand, catches the Potara, and quickly puts it on. His body slips from under Buu's foot and towards Kakarot.
So, this is the fusion. I admit it's very powerful. Now, Majin Buu, I will show you the power of a father and a son. Call me Bardock. Yeah!
Buu wasn't impressed. This guy didn't even have blonde hair like the other ones. Thus, the battle commenced once more. Bardock was getting quite a few shots in, but the divide between the two didn't seem quite as impressive as Buu would have hoped. He wanted a real challenge now, so he told them that he was just going to absorb them. That's when Bardock really kicked things into overdrive. He kicks himself off the ground, spinning towards Buu, smashing his leg against Buu with such force that everything behind him shakes, rock formations falling apart, and far away, windows shattered. But Buu wasn't giving up just yet, and he wrapped himself around Bardock, as if trying to absorb him. That's when the fusion smirked.
This is something special I've been saving up. Kakarot tried going beyond, but his body couldn't take it. Bardock tried doing it, but he couldn't figure out the right path. Now, with the battle genius of one and the limitless potential of the other, I can finally show it off. This is Super Saiyan 3!
The aura exploded and pieces of Buu went flying off everywhere. They reformed, but he couldn't believe the amount of power he had. He was complaining about golden hair. Now there was too much of it. Buu was about to say how excited he was, but Bardock didn't give him a chance, punching him in the face. Buu's regeneration seemingly couldn't keep up with every punch. Gohan cheered on his father and grandfather from the side. The Super Saiyan 3 kicked Buu away and looked over at Gohan, smiling, shooting a thumbs up, but Gohan asked what would happen to the people within Buu. Bardock looked up to the sky, saying, "Hear that, Dende? Bring them back as soon as I'm done with this guy, and return everything to normal." Krillin and Dende hugged each other, cheering, knowing that Buu is finally done for. But Majin Buu's pink goo grew larger and larger from where he had been hit. Angrier than he'd ever been before, he was not only going to destroy the fusion, but Earth itself. He began to charge up a Kamehameha, pointed straight down to Earth. Bardock wasn't going to let that happen, and he cupped his hands to the side.
Spirit Kamehameha!
The beams clashed, but Buu's didn't stand a chance. And in an instant, Majin Buu was gone, obliterated from Earth. Nothing left of the evildoer. Gine and Mr. Satan from the other side cheered, but were honestly a little sad about Fat Buu. Gohan asked just how long this fusion thing was supposed to last, and Bardock said that it's supposed to be permanent. And as he finished the sentence, he defused. Apparently not. Soon enough, after Dende's wishes, people began to come back alive, and the world was rebuilt to be just as it was before the Buu attack. Vegeta was happy that it was finally over, and to see his family again, and so was Goku and Bardock. Mr. Satan kicked rocks, looking around where everybody was revived and teleported back to Earth. Videl hugged him tightly, and to their surprise, they also saw Fat Buu. He had been revived from within Super Buu as well, but that means that he really wasn't that bad of a guy after all, since they only revived good people. After some arguing, they decided to let Mr. Satan keep him around, but there was something missing. Bardock finally looked back, and he saw Gine. She was next to Uranai Baba, who was really tired. She clearly couldn't keep her around for much longer, but he noticed that Gine's halo wasn't gone. She was still dead. Bardock asked why she wasn't brought back, and Gine said that this wasn't her world anymore. But it was Bardock still. It was clear that the people here loved him and needed him, telling him that Grandpa Gohan is there to keep her company, and that she'll see everyone soon enough.
Gine, all I've ever fought against was for you. I can't just leave you.
Everyone was tearful, but most of all, Kakarot and Bardock.
You're right. But we'll meet again, yeah? Just wait for me. I promise I will take care of the family.
And with one final smile, she said goodbye, disappearing into nothingness. Everyone was staring at Bardock, but he turned around, looking straight at androids 17 and 18. They were embarrassed, still thinking about their time as Majins. Bardock wiped the tears off his face and put his arms around them, telling them that they had a lot of training to do if they really thought they could stand a chance against him. The androids smiled, and Bardock nodded at Bulma, saying, "Don't you have an android to rebuild?" Excitedly, Bulma jumped to her feet, realizing that things were going to finally go back to normal again.
Gine loves you all and is excited to see you again, but my place is still here with you all. Plus, I made sure to introduce her to old Gohan while in heaven. I'm sure they have a lot to catch up on. In short, you can't get rid of me that easily, Kakarot. Now let's get some training going.
It has been a long time since the defeat of the evil Majin Buu. Thanks to the efforts of Goku and his father, Bardock, the Earth was once again saved. Though Bardock was happy with being in heaven with Gine, she told him that his time was not yet with her. Instead, he still had much to teach Goku and the others. 3 years have passed since then, and little has happened to disturb peace. Bardock has enjoyed every day of his new life, as he has taken both androids 17 and 18 under his wing. He still lives over at Grandpa Gohan's place, which he has turned into a makeshift dojo for the androids, Raditz, Goten, and Trunks. The kids have taken a great interest in sword fighting, and the androids are incredibly powerful and eager to learn. They have a lot of Saiyan cells within them. Bardock has even been learning from them, as android 17 has taught him to love nature deeply. But this peace would not last forever, as a dark presence loomed overhead. At Bulma's 38th birthday party, King Kai contacted both him and Vegeta to warn them that the destroyer Beerus would be arriving on Earth. Vegeta and Bardock looked at each other in cold sweat. They knew this was the worst thing that could happen. Bardock warned Nappa and Raditz about the situation. Once Beerus arrived, he got right on the subject, asking where he could find the Super Saiyan God. Vegeta had no idea what he was talking about, but Bardock gave him a little more insight. He had heard of this legend before, but he didn't know how or where to find him. Beerus looked at the older Saiyan, judging to see if he was the god. He looked a lot like the other Saiyan that he fought over at King Kai's place. Vegeta manages to diverge the subject by inviting Beerus to eat. This would be difficult, and although they tried hard to keep him calm, it didn't take long for something to go wrong, and for Beerus to explode in anger. Bardock damned the world, wondering where the hell his son was. 17 and 18 both did their best to defend everyone, and actually impressed Beerus quite a bit. Somehow these androids could near the last Saiyan he fought, though they were still unrefined. Bardock and Vegeta teamed up against Beerus, but to no avail. Ultimately, Goku revealed himself and asked Shenron how to bring forth the Super Saiyan God. Bardock is part of the Super Saiyan God transformation, and thus they don't find out that Videl is pregnant just yet. Bardock was dumbfounded by the strength he showed off. For the first time in a very long time, he really wanted to reach that level. He had accepted long ago that his son had far surpassed him, but his Saiyan spirit kicked in into full gear. Once this was done, if the planet was still around, he would ask Beerus for training. After the intense battle, Beerus and Whis came down, saying that he'd just have to destroy Earth some other time. Right then and there, without even thinking, Bardock took a step forward and asked Beerus to teach him. Beerus cocked an eyebrow, and Whis said that he should not talk to him so casually, but his attitude caught Beerus' attention. He reminded him a little bit of himself. He waved Whis off, telling him that it was okay. Whis was then tasked with taking Bardock, Vegeta, and Goku to his planet. He wanted to see who will be the strongest Saiyan in the end. Whis' eyes widened. All 3 Saiyans? He would train all 3? Beerus chuckled. Of course he wouldn't. Whis would. Nappa and Raditz were both jealous of this, but Nappa got over it kinda quickly. Raditz knew he wasn't up to that level anyways, but he does end up asking Piccolo to help with training. After all, he knew that Piccolo was Gohan's master long ago. Thus, the next chapter began. It was a long time since Bardock trained with his son, but he enjoyed it deeply. He realized that he was a little rusty and couldn't quite keep up with the younger Saiyan. Even so, he did his best. Through their training together, the team discovered Super Saiyan Blue, an incredible form unlike anything they had ever seen before. However, unbeknownst to them, the Z fighters on Earth were in some serious trouble. Raditz, Nappa, Gohan, Gotenks, Tien, Krillin, Roshi, and Jacko all face off against Frieza's remaining forces. While Frieza awaits Goku's arrival, he takes great pleasure in torturing his family and friends. Nappa and Raditz convinced themselves that they could take down Frieza, thanks to their years of training since then. Not knowing that Frieza had also undergone training himself, the two tried to attack, only to be slapped away by Frieza's tail. He decided that he would play with these monkeys until the others arrived. Whis' eyes widened. He could sense it. There was something going on Earth. He warned the Saiyans. They wanted to get down there right away, but Bardock put his hand out. He smirked, pointing at himself with his thumb. He said that it had been a while since he got to do something for his family. He wanted to do this himself. Vegeta argued with him, but Bardock simply teleported to Earth, following Gohan's ki, was a horrific sight. Frieza holding Raditz by the neck, standing over Nappa. Frieza laughed loudly, firing one death beam at Gohan. So that's how they felt his ki. Gohan had powered up to the max. It really hurt Bardock's soul to see his friends like this, and he wasted no time, snapping into Super Saiyan Blue and smashing his fist against Frieza's head. The Emperor was sent flying into his own ship. Raditz was caught by his father and laid gently on the ground. Everyone's eyes fixated on Bardock. His blue aura was piercing. The Saiyan turned slowly to watch Frieza float up from the wreckage of his ship. His heart beat fast, confusing this new arrival for Kakarot. But he quickly realized that it wasn't him. This was the other Saiyan that was on Namek. Where was Kakarot? Bardock responded to that question. Kakarot ain't coming. You have to deal with me. And I'm not as merciful as my son. Frieza rushed to Bardock, who simply could not be touched. Bardock spun around Frieza, putting him in a chokehold. He asked Frieza if that was really all he had. The Emperor freed himself, pushing Bardock back as his body was covered by light, breaking off into golden Frieza. Bardock had to admit it. He was impressed, but that costume change wouldn't be enough to deter him from finally avenging the Saiyan race himself. Kakarot had done it once before. Now it was his turn. He'd better prepare himself. Bardock's eyes flared up as the two clashed overhead, with Whis and the others arriving and providing help to the downed warriors. Whis was impressed by Bardock. They had been training for a while, but he had never seen him in a real fight. Judging by this alone, he was the most aggressive and versatile of all the three. No wonder he was once a great Saiyan soldier. He may lack the power and speed of the younger ones, but he made up for it with ingenuity. Frieza tried to trap Bardock in a barrage of death beams, but the Saiyan rushed around the curving blast, trying to make the beam hit Frieza himself, but the Emperor was smarter than that this time, and he wiped the beams in such a way to send Bardock flying down. But the Saiyan caught himself in midair, spinning to land safely. Already with his hand full of ki, the blast took Frieza by surprise, and although he was able to dodge it, he didn't expect it to return in a barrage of smaller blasts from behind. The fight continued for a while, with the clear winner being Bardock. And unlike Vegeta in the original story, he wasn't about to let Frieza wait anymore before his death. Frieza panted, hurt on the floor. He was going to try and destroy Earth, but Bardock, standing proudly above him, looked at his palm, remembering Tora, Fasha, Borga, Shigesh, and Gine. The sound of the Ozaru rang off as he punched Frieza in the gut, making him let go of the ground. He followed it up with another punch, then launching a kick. Bardock followed the attack by appearing above the flying Frieza, blasting him back down and rushing behind him with a fist full of ki. The punch landed right on Frieza's chest, the ground below breaking apart and a heavenly blue light exploding from the fist. The light blinded everyone, and by the time they could see again, there was nothing left but Bardock staring at the sky, holding his bandana proudly in his hand. Frieza was dead. Peace had once again returned to the world, and the Saiyans could go back to training, with Beerus taking special interest in the other Saiyans once more. But peace wouldn't last, as Beerus' brother, Champa, would challenge Universe 7 to a tournament for the sake of the Super Dragon Balls. But the teams were clear in Beerus' eyes: Goku, Vegeta, Bardock, and Monaka. Goku suggested Buu, but Bardock told him that he wasn't the most reliable warrior. Instead, he suggested his own student, Android 17. Goku accepted, and the teams were set. Bardock wasn't a huge fan of tournaments, but he wanted to see what these other universes had to offer. What he didn't expect was another Saiyan. He was very happy to see him, even if it made him a little melancholic. He had many questions for him. He had avenged the Saiyans in his own universe, and was glad to see that at least one Saiyan race prevailed for a long time. Though he didn't trust Frost, he was very proud of the Universe 6 Saiyans, and made Kappa promise to protect them. The tournament began with Goku defeating Botamo, but being disqualified in the battle against Frost. Android 17 was the next one up, and he recognized that there was something wrong right away, just by judging Goku's response to the fight. He had dealt with poachers using poison on animals before, and this was no different. What's more, the poison would not work on him, as he was an android. Whatever Frost tried, no matter how many times he pricked 17's skin, it wouldn't work. 17 didn't even mention the poison until after he defeated Frost, which he found quite amusing. Goku was reinstated. 17 versus Vegeta caused some trouble for the android, as he is too polite to actually insult Vegeta the way Vegeta did. No. Instead, he found a different solution. he could withstand the heat through his android barrier, which he used to crash into Vegeta and through the barrier. His next match was against Cabba, but he was bored, and Vegeta had asked if he could fight the Saiyan instead, so 17 jumped out of the stage as soon as the fight started. Vegeta vs Cabba goes on as expected. Bardock really admires this new Saiyan. He was so powerful, so this is what they could have been if they had chosen a different path. Nappa and Raditz cheered for Vegeta to kick the kid's ass, but Bardock told them to be quiet. That kid may surprise them, and he did just that by easily turning into a Super Saiyan. After Vegeta beat Cabba, his match against Hit was a loss. After all, he couldn't match up to the time skip. It was then Bardock's turn. He smiled. He didn't know what Hit's trick was, but he wanted to have a good match. Super Saiyan Blue was impressive, but it wasn't enough to defeat Hit. Hit's time skip worked well against Vegeta, but Bardock thought of something. His technique works best when the opponents are weaker than him, so he would just have to let Hit think that he's weaker. Then he may actually let his guard down. Everyone was confused to see Bardock performing poorly, until he was finally able to throw a punch which Hit tried to time skip away from, but Bardock snapped into Super Saiyan Blue at just the right moment to increase his speed and still land the punch. This was a surprise to everyone, but Bardock was not able to keep the ruse up. Once Hit powered up, it was over, and Bardock was punched out of the arena. This did give Goku huge hints, and he instead decided to predict Hit's moves based on his own pattern. At the end of the day, the winner is still Monaka after Goku and Hit both give up. Bardock realized that day that there were enemies with amazing powers, even more so than his son and the prince. This Goku is a little less silly than the one we know, so he doesn't just straight up shake Zeno's hand and ask for a tournament, but he does wonder about one, and this piques Zeno's interest. Bardock was actually excited about the prospect, as the Universe 6 tournament opened his eyes. He would have to train extra hard to keep up, and thus, some time passed, when the Z Fighters were surprised by the arrival of future Trunks, and even more so by his reaction to Goku and Bardock. He attacked them savagely, until Vegeta got in the way, asking what the hell is going on. Why was he going on about there being two blacks? Trunks finally calmed down, and he explained everything when a portal opened to reveal who he was talking to. The face seemed familiar, as it wore a familiar scar that Bardock had. The older Saiyan is in pure shock, so much so that he doesn't react, and Goku is the one to challenge him. Bardock Black was extremely powerful, but he was forced to retreat back where he came from. Bardock wanted to find out what the hell was going on, and went along with Goku to Gowazu's planet, while Trunks trained with Vegeta, Nappa, and Raditz. The two Saiyans were pretty much just punching bags though. Goku challenged Zamasu to the fight, which Bardock watched proudly. However, he heavily criticized Goku's moves. He was being sloppy. Perhaps he was distracted by what was going on with Trunks. Zamasu took note of this, assuming that Bardock was the stronger of the two. What really pissed him off was when Bardock started to give him notes on his own fighting. This mortal, he dared? The thought of that Saiyan remained in his head. Once the time machine was refueled, Goku, Trunks, and Vegeta went off to the future to face the evil Bardock Black. Though appalled by the fact that he was causing havoc in the future, knew that he didn't have the stomach to face him himself. Either way, Goku was clearly above Black during their first battle. They wouldn't need him. This is why it was so surprising to see them return that night. According to Goku and Vegeta, Black and Zamazu's power had proven to be too much. Zamazu? Bardock squinted his eyes. So it was that runt. Beerus went off to talk to him. Perhaps he would take care of it. Bardock then made the decision to go to the future with them. That kid, Trunks, was fighting for them. He helped Goku and Vegeta escaped. He would need his help. After learning the Mafuba, Bulma, Vegeta, Goku, and Bardock all head to the future. This Goku is smarter than the one in canon thanks to being raised by Bardock, and he remembers to bring the seal for the Mafuba. Bardock, Goku, and Vegeta appear before Zamasu and Black, who were practically torturing Trunks. Mai, who was safely hidden away, cheered. Goku tossed the jar over to her and told Bulma to show Trunks the Mafuba video that Piccolo prepared. Zamasu and Black had no idea what the hell was going on. Bardock yelled at Black that he'd pay for taking and using his body. The battle began, with Bardock and Black going all out. Black taunted Bardock, saying that he killed everyone around him when he took his body. He was at a rundown house, where 17, 18 Goten and Trunks all trained. He killed every single one of them. This infuriated Bardock. But the taunting didn't stop there, with Zamasu telling Bardock that he was a little sloppy with fighting, much like how Bardock had done to him when they first met. Bardock couldn't believe it, but this Super Saiyan Rose was actually keeping up, if not beating his Super Saiyan Blue. Black commented on this, saying that he regrets not taking Goku's body instead, as he just assumed that Bardock was the stronger of the two. Goku intervened in the battle, while Vegeta battled Zamasu, and it finally looked like the tables were turning in their favor. However, the addition of Bardock prompted Zamasu to use their Potara earrings and fuse early. However, Trunks saw this as a chance to use the Mafuba, though it did seem to work. As Zamasu was being dragged into the jar, he began to shoot a barrage of blasts all over the place. One of them hit Mai, and she was sent flying off. Bardock caught her, but Trunks' concentration was broken as he once again entered his rage state. His attacks became wild and violent. The jar dropped to the floor, shattering. Bardock grabbed onto Mai and Bulma and rushed them out of there. Goku yelled back at his father to take the time machine and bring back a new Mafuba jar. Bardock nodded, getting onto the time machine while Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks defended him furiously. It disappeared, leaving them to continue the fight. Back at the present, Bardock teleports over to the Kaioshin realm, prompting Shin to come and heal Mai, and that they may need him in the future. Shin agreed, and that Gowazu would want to be there as well to try and reason with Zamasu. Bardock asked Roshi for his help in creating the Mafuba, and they were soon on their way back to the future. Once arrived, they were greeted by a terrifying sight. Hundreds, if not thousands of Zamasu all floating around, fighting Goku, Trunks, and Vegeta. They were clearly outmatched by the evildoers, with Trunks being sent flying back into Bardock. He could barely stand up. There is no way they could stand up against this, right? No way they could trap all these Zamasu. They said that it was all hopeless. Goku explained that Trunks' future may be doomed, that they could try to call Zeno with the button that he was given at the Universe 6 tournament. But Bardock interrupted him, telling the three that hope is the last thing that's lost, that he has seen mad tyrants trying to terrorize whole planets, but he never once lost hope. And neither did Gine, nor Gohan, nor Bulma. They need to try fighting for them. They agreed in unison, as Kaioshin thought of an idea. They may be outmatched, but they could do something that Zamasu did as well. Gowazu and Shin gave their pair of Potara earrings, something which insulted the surrounding Zamasu. He tried to attack, but Trunks and Vegeta defended Goku and Bardock as they placed their Potara on, giving birth once more to an old ally, Barlot. The fusion wrote a mighty declaration of victory, proclaiming himself to be Barlot Blue, Zamasu's damnation. Trunks and Vegeta nodded at each other, them too placing the Potara on. Barlot was too fast for any of the Zamasu to even approach Trunks and Vegeta. The two's bodies slammed against each other, giving birth to Vegeta. The two fusions stood side by side, staring down at the army of villains. Barlot told Vegeta to take the ones on the left, he'd take the ones on the right. The two fist bumped and blitzed forward, a huge wave of wind dragging behind them and hitting the villains, hurting them, and even making some of them disappear. Barlot loved the thrill of battle. The Spirit Kamehameha was a powerful move he used to take out large portions of villains, but they seemed endless. Even so, he was keenly aware of his surroundings and wouldn't let any of them get away. Vegenk's burning impact served to create massive explosions through the arena that decimated hundreds of opponents. He would fill his sword full of ki, slicing across space and time to destroy Zamasu. Barlot whispered, "Show off." Under his breath, the Zamasu all rushed up to the sky, lifting one hand, generating giant orbs of ki and launching them forward into the two fusions. The two of them looked at each other, nodded, and looked back at the swarm of ki balls. Vegenk's placed his hands horizontally, Barlot vertically, and the two concentrated all their might into the next attack. An orb of ki that crackled purple electricity, blue on the outside with a bright yellow core. The team yelled out,
"Final Spirit Burning Kamehameha!"
The orbs of ki clashed against the incredible blast, which consumed the infinity of Zamasu. As the blast dissipated and the smoke cleared, Vegenk's and Barlot shot each other a thumbs up. However, the fallen Zamasu began to reform and regenerate. It was a horrific sight to see them all contort and change back into their regular form. The fusion and the Kaioshin were surrounded. There was no other choice. They had to use the Mafuba. But was it even possible to trap more than one? Only one way to find out. Both Goku and Trunks now knew how to do the Mafuba, and so did their respective fusions. Standing back to back, the fusions screamed, "Mafuba!" The hurricane of beams swirled, trapping a large swarm. It was hard to keep up, even harder to navigate over to the jar. Bardock yelled at Shin and Gowazu to grab onto the jar, which they jumped onto, holding it tight against the ground. They closed their eyes and felt the two fusions guide the Mafuba into the jar, unimaginable power being sucked into it. A blood-curdling scream was heard as the last and the first Zamasu tried to escape the containment wave, until it was silenced by the pop of the bottle cap. Zamasu was defeated. Soon enough, the fusions undid themselves, with the heroes finally being able to rest. Trunks looked at the jar, explaining that they can't just leave it about for someone to find someday. Shin said that they won't, that they're gonna take it over to Zeno to take care of. Future Trunks thanked everyone for their help, and he couldn't have done it without them. They all returned to the past, with Gowazu returning to his universe and everyone having a small celebration. Bulma worked on the time machine, refueling it and filling a set of capsules full of resources for Trunks and Mai to take to their future and help rebuild. She reminded them that the Namekian Dragon Balls are out there somewhere, in case they needed to make a wish. Goku did have one request for them before they left. He wanted Trunks to participate in the upcoming tournament. Trunks was a little unsure, but Mai encouraged him. He deserved a little break. Some fun fighting with no stakes would be good. And she meant no stakes, as in this reality, Goku does not slip up and accidentally jeopardize the various universes. So this tournament is for the sake of just the Super Dragon Balls. It is time for the Z Fighters to train and prepare for the Tournament of Power. We open with Bardock at his updated dojo at the top of Mount Paotsu. He is not only instructing Raditz 18 and 17, but many other warriors as well, who come from all over the world to train under him. Future Trunks and Krillin arrive with a newly rebuilt Android 16, whom Bardock welcomes with open arms and a warm hug. A surprise for everyone. He had helped Bulma with everything he could in order to rebuild 16, as it had felt like a piece of the androids and himself was missing once he passed, during the battles against Majin Buu. Krillin and 18 are not together, and even expecting a little girl. They all know why they're here, the Tournament of Power. Kakarot soon arrives, inviting them all to their greatest challenge yet. Though Goku hadn't messed up like in the original story, and made Zeno want to destroy the universes. This battle is exclusively for the Super Dragon Balls. Even so, they have to prove to Zeno that they're worthy keeping around. Zeno's still considering destroying some universes. The team is soon decided. 16, 17, 18, Kakarot, Vegeta, Bardock, Gohan, Piccolo, Future Trunks, and there's still one missing. They ask Buu, but he's soon asleep. Krillin wants to join in, but he knows that everyone has far surpassed him by now. Nappa's too busy watering his plants. And Raditz, well, he wants to join in. But after everything they've been through, feels like there should always be someone on Earth ready to defend it, just in case. Thus, Goku brings up the idea of reviving Frieza. Bardock is completely against it, thinking his son must be an idiot for even saying that. Kakarot tries to rationalize it, explaining that Frieza was able to get so strong in such a short amount of time, but Bardock is having none of it, insulted. Vegeta tries to get between the two, but their aura quickly sparks up into Super Saiyan Blue, commencing a fight between father and son. It's anyone's match as Bardock plays more dirty than Goku, an old trait from his time in the Saiyan army. But Goku knows he must win, in order to prove to Bardock that he is more than capable of taking care of Frieza if need be. When Bardock fired a rebellion spear at Goku, the younger Saiyan does something very impressive, catching the blast and turning it into his own attack at Bardock, with Bardock sent flying into a pillar. It's clear that Kakarot is capable of handling himself. Bardock spits some blood out, and, though reluctant, allows Goku to retrieve Frieza. Frieza is revived, and he hates everyone. Bardock accompanied Goku to the site of Frieza's return, with Goku and Frieza still fighting, while Bardock spectates. Bardock is worried that Frieza is getting too strong, that he could achieve something beyond Golden. Even so, the Tournament of Power begins. The androids work together, while Piccolo, Bardock, and Gohan team up against a slew of enemies the second the bell rang. Goku sticks close to Frieza in order to watch him, while Trunks and Vegeta face Ribrianne and the Fireballs. Bardock soon comes face to face with the Universe 6 Saiyans, waving to them like an old friend. The Saiyans have no time for this old man, with Caulifla ordering Kale and Kappa to attack. They are surprised to see him easily deal with the young Saiyans, dodging and weaving out of the way of their attacks. Bardock comments on how they need more training, and if they need someone, then he's always up to teach new Saiyans. They took this as an insult, with Caulifla rushing in and putting her all into each punch as a Super Saiyan. But Bardock realized just how much turmoil was in her heart. She reminded him a lot of himself when he first landed on Earth. But she was impressive, and Bardock taught her along the way. Kale and Kappa in the meantime faced off against Gohan and Trunks. It was great for the two half Saiyans to work together after so many years. Kappa and Trunks had an intense match, while Vegeta watched them close by, finishing off with a Gallic gun clash that ended with Kappa being sent flying out of bounds. Kale was getting angrier and angrier, to the point where she exploded in her power and into her berserk state. 16 watched this happen and rushed in to help Gohan. He was thankful of the android, as he tried to explain to Kale that he knew exactly how she felt, having all this incredible, uncontrollable power. But Kale didn't stop, and it seemed like she was going to knock Gohan out of the ring. But 16 steps in the way of the blast, and he is fired off of the ring. Gohan curses, thanking 16, as 17 and 18 join in the fight against her. Gohan continues talking while 18 and 17 tell him that it's useless. But Gohan calls on Caulifla, telling her that if she really cares about her, then she will help her control the power. It takes some time, but Kale listens to Caulifla, ultimately causing her to control her power. Gohan smiles at Bardock, recalling the time when he did the same for him. The fights continue to ramp up, with Trunks and Vegeta teaming up against Toppo, who rushes through them both. They come up with a plan to trip Toppo out of the arena, and it works, but Trunks and Vegeta are caught in the middle of it. Knowing his father could still fight, Trunks pushes Vegeta back into the ring as him and Toppo fall. Piccolo and Gohan face off and defeat Anilasa, though at the cost of Piccolo falling off of the ring as well. Gohan battled Dispo alongside the androids, and they managed to knock him out of the arena, though Gohan was blindsided by Kefla and falls out of the ring. Kale and Caulifla ended up fusing into her, one of the strongest fighters during the tournament. The androids wanted to challenge this being and had the exact way of doing it. Prior to entering the tournament, Bardock issues a challenge to the androids as part of their training, working as one. He gave them the Potara which he had used during the battles against Buu, telling them that with their power there is no way any of them can stand a chance. It was to Kefla's surprise that androids 17 and 18 fused, just as they had, into android 35. The battle puts a stop to every other one out there, as it seems like both fusions are a perfect counter to one another. But 35 had one thing Kefla didn't: infinite energy. Over time, the android wore out Kefla to the point where it walked straight through her blast with the android barrier, exploding it and sending Kefla into the abyss. Like in the original story, Goku manages to unlock Omen through the battle against Jiren. But not only that, Vegeta unlocks Evolution. Bardock watches both of them improve and improve with each minute that passes, wondering what his next step could be. Hints of his latent power waiting to come out. In a moment that truly disgusted Bardock, during the battle against Jiren, Vegeta, Bardock, and Frieza all battled together against them. Surprisingly, Frieza saves Bardock during the battle, telling him that he can't afford to lose this tournament. Bardock punches Frieza away and continues the match. Vegeta sacrifices himself to give energy to Goku, while 35 used their android barrier to protect him, until Jiren crashes into it, and the fusion undoes itself, sending both of them into the abyss. Bardock had no option but to cheer as he supported Frieza and Kakarot with a ginormous Rebellion Blaster, taking Jiren down and getting the victory for Universe 7. He nodded at Frieza, but promised him that the Emperor would fall by his hand. Thus, Bardock made Zeno promise that the universe would not be destroyed. The small god finally agreed. He thought it would be fun, but maybe for another day. But Bardock did have one wish for the dragon: to unlock his hidden potential. The dragon did so, and peace returned to the universe. Future Trunks and Mai thanked everyone for the chance to fight alongside them, and returned to their future timeline. Frieza is revived by Whis. Before he leaves, Frieza vows to kill the Saiyans one day. Bardock is uneased by these words. Bardock continues to train the androids, and trains with both Goku and Vegeta, but that latent potential he wished from the Dragon Balls never seems to show itself. It was strange. He really didn't feel any different. Even going to the lookout to garden with Nappa didn't help him. He wouldn't have much time to think about it, as eventually Frieza's spaceship loomed over Earth once more. Broly and Paragus had arrived. Though far away, Bardock and Raditz can feel Broly's immense power, which reminded him of Kale. Quickly, they both approached the scene, as they felt a familiar ki of Frieza, and most surprisingly Paragus. Bardock watched as the battles went down, opting not to fight and to give Vegeta and Goku a chance of victory. The amazing power of the Ozaru that Broly had was impressive, and Bardock wondered if it was possible to obtain that strength. However, he realized that Broly is being controlled with a shock collar. Bardock argues with Paragus and tries to relate to him. If it wasn't for the support of Grandpa Gohan, his friends and family, he would have turned out just like him. He was already turning his own son into a weapon, just like Paragus is. Bardock tells him that it's not too late, that they can work together. Paragus is ultimately convinced and tries to look for the remote, but realizes that it's missing. Paragus pleads with Broly to end the battle, but Frieza wasn't going to let that happen, firing a beam directly at him. Bardock slapped it out of the way, standing over Frieza and warning him not to waste his third chance at life. Frieza scoffs, but the battle ultimately ends with Goku and Vegeta fusing into Gogeta and defeating Broly in their base form. After all, he didn't turn into a Super Saiyan. Broly stands down, with Lemo and Shilai revealing themselves and hurrying by Broly's side. With Broly, Bardock, Vegeta, Goku, Raditz, and Paragus standing triumphantly in front of Frieza, the Emperor has no option but to retreat back into space. Frieza gives up. Bardock considers killing him, but Goku asks Bardock if that's really how he wants to win, with a blindsided shot from the back. Bardock agrees that this wouldn't be the Saiyan way, but that letting him live was a huge mistake. Time passes once more. Bardock becomes the Grandpa Gohan to Paragus and Broly. They live at his dojo. One day while Goku, Vegeta, Broly, and Bardock visit Mr. Satan and Majin Buu, they watch as the Galactic Patrol kidnaps Buu. They try to fight them, but are quickly kidnapped as well. Miraz eventually explains that they are trying to use the Grand Supreme Kai to stop Moro, but Bardock interrupts him. He says that they will take care of Moro. They didn't need to treat Buu like this. He had been great friends with his wife when she visited Earth, and was very thankful to him always. They make their way to Namek, soon finding Moro as he tortures and kills Namekians for the sake of his wish for youth. Goku and Vegeta are having a rough time with Moro, with Broly soon joining in, but his power is drained. This powers up Moro incredibly. Bardock analyzes the battle and starts to notice a pattern. Moro had been absorbing their ki. Thankfully, he had a little trick up his sleeve from his time on Yardrat. Forced Spirit Fission. Bardock tells Goku and Vegeta to take a step back as he cracks his knuckles. It was his time to battle. Moro laughs at the old man. He could not take him on. The two battle, and though Moro is confident, he quickly realizes that Super Saiyan Blue has been slowly draining Moro of his energy as well. There was a standstill as the two tried to steal energy from one another, but Bardock wasn't giving himself energy. Instead, he yelled at Goku to prepare the Genki Dama. Goku didn't know how, with such little energy left on the planet, but Bardock had been funneling all the energy he stole from Moro into Goku. Vegeta himself gave energy, along with Buu, the Time Patrollers, and especially Broly, creating a huge Spirit Bomb. Moro's eyes widened in the face of the Spirit Bomb, and he tried to steal its energy, but Bardock put him in a full Nelson and stole more of his energy this way. As soon as the Spirit Bomb hit Moro, Bardock teleported away and left him to disintegrate. It was done. Miraz thanks them all for their help, incredibly impressed. He wanted to see what else they had under their sleeve, and asked if they could train with them sometime. They all agreed, and soon realized just what he was, an angel. He knew too much about Ultra Instinct. Bardock asked him if he could feel the hidden power that the Dragon Balls had gifted him, but Miro said that there was something, but it was faint. Even so, Bardock continued to train hard, especially once Miros invited them to the Galactic Patrol's time chamber. With Bardock and Broly working closely together, he was trying to train him to control his power, much like he did with Gohan. But Bardock began to lose a little bit of his drive. It seems like maybe he was really reaching his peak. Vegeta, Broly, and Goku were evolving so fast, he couldn't keep up. He returned to his dojo, thinking that he was no longer needed for their escapades. Until the Heaters had arrived on Earth to take Goku and Vegeta to planet Cereal. Bardock was so busy training Broly that he hadn't noticed. Later, Bardock tries to find his son, but can't. He goes to Capsule Corp and learns to his horror that they have left with the Heaters. That name, it was a name he hadn't heard in many years. It made his blood boil. Gas, Maki, Oil, and Elec. He had met them once before, and had even been tipped off about Vegeta's destruction by them. He desperately tried to recall the location of planet Cereal, locating the key of his son and Vegeta before teleporting. Bardock arrives just as Granolah is about to kill Vegeta. As he was showing off Ultra Ego, Bardock was impressed, but he steps up and tells Granolah to stop this nonsense. Granolah recognizes the Saiyan, but he doesn't know why. All he knows is that all Saiyans must die. Firing at Bardock, but Monito steps in the way with his arms out.
Don't shoot Granolah. This is the man who saved our lives.
Granola's surprised and asks Monito what he means. How can this be possible? With Bardock approaching and embracing Monito as if old friends. The Namekian was surprised. Bardock wasn't like this when they first met. An explanation was in order. Everyone there learns about Bardock saving Granolah, Monito, and Mizuli, and how the Heaters were responsible for Mizuli's death. Granolah is angry. All these years working for the Heaters and he never knew. He was working for the monsters that killed his mother. But he sighed, asking for forgiveness. Bardock puts a hand on Granolah's shoulder, telling him that he was just proud that the boy he saved had grown up to be a powerful warrior, properly introducing everyone to Granolah. But it's clear to the Heaters that they can't let this go. With Elec arriving alongside the powered-up gas, looks like the jig is up. All the warriors power up, Granolah in his maximum state, Vegeta in Ultra Ego, Goku in Ultra Instinct, and Bardock in Blue Evolution. Elec was surprised to see Bardock still alive, and promised him that things would end differently this time. The fight commences, but it's clear that Bardock doesn't stand a chance. Instead, he gives advice to the warriors about how he defeated Gas the first time. But Gas wasn't going to fall for the same tricks, targeting Bardock specifically. He was choking Bardock to death, but Granolah fired his most powerful sniper shot at Gas, getting him off of Bardock. Bardock coughed, thanking Granolah in between coughs. Granolah gives him a hand up, saying that it was his turn to save the old man. Ultra Instinct Goku seems to be failing against Gas, something Bardock didn't think was possible.
You're not fighting like a Saiyan, Kakarot. What happened to your Saiyan grit?
Goku recognizes this. He wasn't doing it with his full heart. He had to remember the basics. Grandpa Gohan, Bardock, they were his rock. He used to fight with emotion and passion before discovering Ultra Instinct, and it's his dad's encouragement that helps him reach and break through into true UI. The breakthrough allows Goku to throw Gas up into space in an avatar-like state. Granolah, Vegeta, and Bardock nodded at each other, each firing an enormous blast that finally defeated Gas. Or did it? Because the skeleton-like monster continued to get back up, aiming to kill Bardock. But just as it approached him, a blast deafened everyone's ear. Bardock caught Gas as he fell into his arms. It was almost sad to see this kid die, a decrepit old man, just because of his brother's ambitions. But who had blasted him down? Another boom rang off as Elec hit the ground. Bardock looked up. Frieza's tail smacked the ground, shattering rock beneath. He had once again shown his ugly face. As Gas disintegrates, Bardock takes steps towards Frieza. Goku and Vegeta warn him that this isn't the time, but the situation was just too good for Frieza to ignore. Not only were the Heaters and Granolah in the same place, but also the Saiyans. If he destroyed the planet now, it would be his victory forever. They all got into their defensive positions, but with incredible speed, Frieza not only transformed into his new black state, he also placed his hand on the ground and fired a blast, hitting the core of the planet, making it unstable and ready to explode. Goku couldn't believe it. He told Bardock to grab his hand and teleport away with Granolah, Vegeta, and Monaito, but Bardock ignored it. He looked back at his son, slowly. Goku knew that face. The face of a man who was at the end of the line. A man who wanted to die the only way he knew how to live. Fighting. Granolah tried to argue, but Bardock simply said that it was his honor to save him twice. No, Dad, you can't!
No. This ends here. I can't allow him to continue like this. I am finishing things here and now!
But...
Go on, save everyone in the city. Teleport them to Earth. I'll buy you some time. Heh. I'll even tell your mother and grandpa that you said hi.
Kakarot wiped tears from his eyes.
Prince, one thing before you leave. Anything for you, Bardock.
I need a moon. Vegeta and Goku wonder why, but Bardock revealed his tail hidden beneath his clothes. It had regrown? When? No time for questions. Without hesitation, Vegeta threw an artificial moon to the sky and instantly teleported away with the rest.
Heh. You see, Frieza, after my wish to the Dragon Balls, I didn't see a difference. Until a few months ago, when my tail returned. I kept it hidden from my son and the rest. I wanted to first discover what it could mean. I was unsuccessful, but no better time than now to return to my roots.
Bardock transformed into a hulking beast of an Ozaru. But Frieza Black wasn't phased. Even if this Ozaru was golden, what could it be in the face of the true Emperor? He had been waiting for this for a long time. Even so, Ozaru Bardock was unpredictable, and Frieza was getting annoyed. He had to speed up the process. He had to destroy the planet. Frieza went up to the sky, creating a death ball to shoot directly at the monkey. But to Bardock, the death ball was just a ball. A ball that in the sky looked like a planet. Something was strange. Even in this uncontrollable state, Bardock could feel nostalgia. Frieza threw the death ball, and Bardock Ozaru caught it. He was losing, struggling to hold it. A tear fell from the Ozaru's eye. Within the key ball, he could see them. Kakarot, Raditz, Gohan, Goten, Piccolo, Buu, Trunks, Vegeta, Chi-Chi, Broly, Android 17, 18, 16, Grandpa Gohan, Granolah, and Gine. A red light began to engulf the Ozaru as he shrank. His hands becoming human, his face returning, but it was different. This was something else. A primal power that reminded him of Broly. He knew it. He knew he could do it. The death ball exploded before it could reach the planet. And now, in front of Frieza, stood Bardock, red fur covering him. Frieza Black couldn't believe it. After all these years, the Saiyans could still find ways to evolve. It didn't matter. As Bardock said, this ends here. Bardock and Frieza clash overhead as the planet has lava spewing out. Bardock grabs Frieza by the face, dragging him through the lava. But the Emperor spins around and throws Bardock down into it. Bardock opens his aura up, all the lava dispersing around him. His clothes, Grandpa Gohan's old Kami uniform, was being burned. Bardock rushed up, kneeing Frieza in the gut, but Frieza grabbed it and was about to break his leg. Bardock saw this and blasted Frieza in the face. If they weren't equals, they were certainly true rivals. They both knew there was no other way to end this. The fight continued until Frieza began charging an Emperor Death Beam. Bardock began to charge his own Rebellion Spear. He promised Frieza this would be the end. The two fired, struggling against one another, determined that only one would survive this battle, if any. The blasts continued to push against one another until... boom. The planet and the blast exploded at once. From within the explosion, Bardock simply smiled, saying Kakarot's name. It had been such a long time since he arrived on Earth with him. He was saved by Gohan, trained many, even became the legend itself. Yeah, it was a good life. If he had to die, by sending his son, Vegeta, and the others to Earth in order to save him from Frieza, then he was glad to do it. He wondered what it would have been like if he had sent him away alone like he once planned. It didn't matter now. He was safe. They all were. Back on Earth, Goku turns to face the sky. In a panic, he realizes that the ki of his father spiked just for a few and quickly died down. He couldn't feel Frieza. Was he still out there? No one knew. It seems like everyone found out at once, as Granolah teared up. Vegeta stayed quiet. At the dojo, 16 stood up suddenly, walking out. 17 and 18 followed suit. Broly and Raditz were together at Grandpa Gohan's old home, where Bardock's original grave was. Gohan looked up to the sky while writing his newest book, and then back at his closet, where an old Saiyan armor given to him by Bardock was. Piccolo opened his eyes during meditation. It was peaceful, but solemn. Goku vows to avenge his father, and soon after, tells Gohan, Vegeta, the androids Broly, and Granolah that it's time to train. But in the afterlife, Bardock takes slow steps towards King Yama's desk, seeing two familiar figures beside him. King Yama says that they insisted on seeing him to heaven personally. Gine and Grandpa Gohan smiled at Bardock, hugging him tightly. For the first time in a long time, they were all together. Gine asked Bardock if he was sure this time. Would Kakarot be okay? Bardock takes a deep breath and smiles. He flicked his halo. He realized that he really was dead this time. He couldn't believe it, but he could truly rest. Bardock turned back to Gine and Gohan, finally saying, "Yeah, the kids will be alright."